Chapter 1560. Lu Ping countered Jiao Doran's puppet's weakness with his own strength. Although it seemed like Lu Ping had to cast several spells in order to succeed, in reality, all of this happened in a split second. It was just a strike that Lu Ping had planned for a long time. Jiao Doran's puppet naturally wouldn't let Lu Ping strip off its own spell so easily. In the instant that Lu Ping triggered the disaster, it had already condensed a huge amount of water elemental cloud chi. The cloud chi continued to condense, and under the gusts of cold wind, it floated above the sea of fire and began to rain. However, all of this was still a little too late. Although the sea of fire was quickly extinguished by the rain, Lu Ping had already successfully condensed the myriad sword art. He waved his hands toward the sea of fire that was about to extinguish, and two slightly dimmer colored fire seeds fell into his palms and disappeared. Although Lu Ping had restrained his spell, the puppet's rain did not stop. The curtain of rain continued to move forward, and it looked like it was about to envelop Lu Ping as well. At this moment, Lu Ping was not in a hurry. He formed a hand seal and muttered an incantation. Then, he suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a gust of clear air. Suddenly, it turned into a gust of wind, blowing the spreading curtain of rain and the dark clouds in the sky in the opposite direction. Seeing this, the puppet also changed its spell. The dark clouds actually took the initiative to let the gust of wind pass, and then slowly fell down. Together with the curtain of rain, it turned into an ice wall. When the gust of wind blew on it, the ice wall became even stronger. Unexpectedly, Lu Ping also hit a trick in his spell. The wind that was blocked spun around and condensed into wind blades in midair, forming a huge green wind sword that stabbed toward the ice wall. Countless wind blades struck the same spot on the ice wall at the same time. After a series of crashing sounds, the ice wall immediately shattered into pieces. Lu Ping was using the Xianling sect's Merry 18 swords. Although the Xianling sect of the North Sea was still standing, it was like a vassal of Zhenling in the North Sea. The sect's inheritance had long fallen into Zhenling's hands. Naturally, Lu Ping would not miss the chance to obtain the sword technique of the North Sea sect. The second magic was completely broken by Lu Ping, and the broken ice turned into the original profound chi, pouring into Lu Ping's body through the void. A cold chill seeped into his bones. Even with Lu Ping's powerful body, he couldn't help but shiver. The ice elemental origin essence condensed into the fifth ice elemental origin skill in his true spirit. It was called 10,000 Miles of Ice Seal and was naturally very powerful. It was an inherited skill of the Ice Dragon clan that Lu Ping obtained from Yin Tianchu. However, after Lu Ping shattered the ice wall, the sword skill's power was almost depleted. The puppet had seized the opportunity to cast another innate technique. A bleak aura rushed towards Lu Ping's face, making him feel a sense of familiarity, but at the same time, a sense of dread. Fallen Petals Perfusion Art. Lu Ping had also finished cultivating this would attribute original magic. Although this magic was strange and powerful, it was targeted at living creatures. It seemed to be of no use to the puppet transformed from the real body of the seventh patriarch, but it was a threat to Lu Ping. However, just when the puppet was about to execute this divine ability, its body suddenly trembled, and then it let go of its hands that were forming seals. It suddenly waved its hand forward, and its entire body turned into a series of afterimages that flew back. A sharp sword ray suddenly appeared at the puppet's previous position and slashed horizontally, shredding dozens of afterimages. Although the shapeless sword spell, which Lu Ping had refined to the level of a supreme technique, was ineffective, it still interrupted the puppet's attempt to cast its original technique. However, the real body puppet also reacted very quickly. The moment it retreated, it had already condensed another original magic power in its hand. A long whip shadow whistled toward where Lu Ping was. Wherever the whip shadow passed, the void was shattered, and there was a sharp whistle. Lu Ping's divine thoughts suddenly became turbulent. However, at this time, Lu Ping turned a blind eye to this whip shadow. The escape light under his feet flashed, and he actually chased the whip shadow toward the real body puppet. Just as the real body puppet's magic power was about to hit Lu Ping, the void 10 meters away from the real body puppet fluctuated, and a slightly childish and crisp shout came, "Kill!" The 3-inch wooden sword was held in the hand of a lively little person. The moment it broke through the void, it went straight for the real body puppet's left eye, and it instantly pierced through the real body puppet's magic power. Lu Xiaoping, this avatar made by Lu Ping with 8,000 years of old willow wood, had been carefully nurtured by Lu Ping for 500 years. Now, it had also reached the true spirit realm along with Lu Ping's cultivation. At least this sudden, all-out attack was not weaker than an ordinary new true spirit realm cultivator. This was one of the trump cards that Lu Ping had prepared for himself for a long time. Now that he suddenly used it, this attack was really like a flying immortal, greatly exceeding the real body puppet's expectations. It tried to block this unexpected fierce attack in a flurry. The whip shadow that swept toward Lu Ping in the air was forcibly twisted by the real body puppet, which shocked Lu Ping. If it was Lu Ping who used this magic power with all his strength and then twisted it, he would at least suffer a lot of injuries because of the reverse flow of his true qi, but the real body puppet in front of him really did it. Before Lu Xiaoyou's 3-inch small sword reached its body, it was whipped away by a whip shadow. At a glance, Lu Ping saw that there was a whip mark 3 inches deep on the chest of this avatar. The chest that was used to store the supreme-grade spirit stones to control the avatar was smashed, and the supreme-grade spirit stones inside were all turned into powder. The entire avatar floated in the void, motionless, and Lu Ping's head suddenly tilted back in an instant, as if he had been punched in the face. The avatar was seriously injured, and naturally, Lu Ping, who was connected to its soul, would not have an easy time. However, Lu Ping endured the sharp pain in his divine sense and took advantage of this critical moment to break the real body puppet's magic power. Although the real body puppet tried its best to dodge, the sword still stabbed its left shoulder. The sword entered 3 inches deep, and a vigorous and irresistible force suddenly surged from the real body puppet's body. Lu Ping, who had formed a sword seal to control the sword of true spirit, shook his hands, and the sword seal in his hands was immediately shattered. The inexplicable force did not pour into his body as Lu Ping had expected, and turned into the sword of true spirit that had pierced into his body. This scene was very similar to what wise old ape had encountered before. The recoil force from the sword body made him retreat in the void. Lu Ping looked at the flying sword that was inserted into the real body puppet's body with a gloomy expression. He had no choice but to put away the avatar in the distance. After scanning with his divine sense, Lu Ping breathed a sigh of relief. Only a part of the body of the avatar was damaged, and the chest cavity where the supreme-grade spirit stones were stored was affected. The soul cultivation wood, which was used to store a part of Lu Ping's divine sense to control the avatar, was not damaged. Chapter 1561. The Sword of the Real Spirit, Emoli, was Lu Ping's natal spiritual treasure. Although it had not been nurtured for as long as the natal Genshin formation, it was the most frequently used weapon against enemies. It was the medium through which most of Lu Ping's magical source power could be used. Furthermore, it was the horn of the real spirit that belonged to Jiao Daoren. The horn of the real spirit? Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. When he raised his head to look at the pure yang flying sword that had pierced into Jiao Daoren's true body, he saw that the flying sword was glowing brightly and its body was trembling. Runes that were both familiar and strange at the same time flowed on its body. As a natal spiritual treasure, although Lu Ping had been forced back by the tyrannical power in Jiao Daoren's true body, his connection with this spiritual treasure had not been severed. Through his divine sense, Lu Ping could clearly sense that the flying sword was undergoing a qualitative change. The flying sword spirit, Emoli, was like a gluttonous child, constantly absorbing the surging essence qi that had been transmitted from the blade that had pierced into Jiao Daoren's true body. Thinking about the power of the 1,000-pound staff that wise ape had wielded, Lu Ping could not help but feel excited. He did not know to what extent the power of the sword of the real spirit would increase. Was there an even more powerful spiritual treasure than a pure yang spiritual treasure? Even the soaring dragon galaxy technique that Lu Ping had cultivated did not have an answer to this question. However, after Lu Ping had advanced to the true spirit realm, the answer to this question had become increasingly certain, especially after Lu Ping had snatched the 7-feathered fan, He could sense that there was an unknown power hidden in this heaven-opening spiritual treasure. It was a power that even made Lu Ping's heart palpitate. Although Lu Ping had only sensed this power after he entered the passageway formation, he was still unable to use it. All he knew was that once this power was released, its might would be far beyond that of ordinary pure yang spirit treasures. A loud shout came from afar and interrupted Lu Ping's thoughts. "Lu Daoyu, don't panic. The old man is here to lend you a hand." When Lu Ping looked up, he saw a flash of green light flashing across the sky, striking towards the back of Jiao Doran's true body. Lu Ping was infuriated, but he saw that the real body of the puppet seemed to only feel the danger now. Its body suddenly turned into a stream of light and disappeared, leaving only Lu Ping's sword of true spirit and a green light that came at him. However, he heard Longhuai ancestor yell from afar, "Be careful, Lu Daoyu. I didn't expect the puppet to dodge, but this magical power is heading towards you. I'm really sorry." Lu Ping put away the annoyance on his face and waved his hand to take the sword of true spirit into his hand. At the same time, his body moved according to his heart, dodging the magical power of the green light. His divine sense spread out like a tide in all directions, tracking the movements of Jiao Doran's real body puppet. Not long after Lu Ping dodged the green light, the Longhuai ancestor made a series of seemingly clumsy hand seals and dissipated in midair. Looking at the apologetic Longhuai ancestor from afar, Lu Ping smiled and said, "It's all right. It was just an unintentional move, fellow Taoist." The Longhuai ancestor also released his divine sense like Lu Ping, paying close attention to the movements in the surrounding void, trying to track the movements of Jiao Doran's real body. However, he asked, "It seems that the real body puppet was hit by Lu Daoyu's sword just now? Fellow Taoist Lu's strength is truly worthy of this old man's admiration, but how are the injuries of that puppet?" Lu Ping's eyes wandered around and said, "That puppet is powerful, but it's still a puppet with a different posture. I gave up on the trap and finally managed to stab it with my sword, but its real body is already a puppet body, so the sword didn't have much effect." The Longhuai ancestor was naturally skeptical, but he said, "What a pity." Lu Ping immediately asked, "Was Peng Doran's real body puppet repelled by you, senior? Where is Fellow Me now?" The Longhuai ancestor nodded. With Fellow Me's help, the old man repelled the puppet. However, thinking that fellow Taoist was fighting Jiao Doran's real body puppet alone, the old man rushed over first to help. "Fellow Me should be arriving soon, right?" Lu Ping only nodded to indicate that he understood, but he did not comment on how much truth was in the Longhuai ancestor's words. At the very least, he did not say the truth himself. As soon as the Longhuai ancestor finished speaking, another beam of light rose in the direction he had flown from. Mi Xuance's voice came from afar. "You two, this is the depths of the tunnel formation." Lu Ping and the Longhuai ancestor suddenly shouted at the same time. "Oh no!" The two of them turned into beams of light and charged towards Mi Xuance. Mi Xuance thought that the two of them were following him to the depths of the tunnel formation after hearing his notice, so he stopped to wait for them. However, he did not expect to see Lu Ping's urgent expression as he shouted, "Hide! Fellow Me!" Mi Xuance's expression froze, but he immediately understood. At the moment of life and death, his sleeves suddenly exploded as he waved his hands. A whirlwind rose from beneath his feet and enveloped his entire body. However, a beam of light burrowed into the whirlwind before it could completely envelop him. Loud roars and shouts rang out from the green wind. One could vaguely see that Mi Xuance had already turned into his true spirit and was fighting Jiao Doran's real body puppet. The flying sword beneath Lu Ping's feet shone brightly. Under the Longhuai ancestor's shocked gaze, Lu Ping suddenly overtook him and dispersed the whirlwind with a single strike. Jiao Doran's real body puppet turned and fled, leaving behind only Mi Xuance's torn and dying true spirit body. The Longhuai ancestor hurriedly caught up and swung the tree branch spirit treasure in his hand. Several green vines swept towards the retreating Jiao Doran's real body, but the puppet once again turned into a beam of light and dodged. However, a beam of sword light arrived first. Just as the beam of light evaded the Longhuai ancestor's interception and transformed back into the real body, it passed through the puppet's body. The puppet's real body did not move or roar. It still turned into a beam of light and disappeared into the void, leaving only its left arm floating in the air. The Longhuai ancestor waved the tree branch spirit treasure in an attempt to stop it with 2 spells, but it was useless in the end. Lu Ping waved and put the severed arm into his storage tool. The Longhuai ancestor's eyelids twitched as he watched from the side, but he endured it in the end and said, "I wonder how fellow me is doing." Lu Ping had already reached Mi Xuance's side, but Mi Xuance had already put away his true spirit body. Seeing Lu Ping coming over, he opened his mouth but spat out several mouthfuls of blood. He smiled bitterly and said, "I thought I might have a chance of survival by following you, but I can't escape death in the end. The path to immortality can't rely on external forces after all." Lu Ping's expression was solemn. He glanced at the wound on Mi Xuance's chest that looked like it had been struck by a sharp claw. Although Mi Xuance wanted to borrow his strength, he did not intend to harm him. Although he was weak, he did his best to help Lu Ping. He could be considered a reliable ally. The passage formation was filled with danger at every step. There were only a few true spirit cultivators left out of the 18, but they still had no idea where the exit of the formation was. Mi Xuance's expression suddenly changed, as if he had thought of something. He said, "After the Pengdaran puppet was repelled, there was a huge change in the passage formation. It was in the direction where Xiao Baiyu, Butterfly Fairy, and the rest went. You too. At this point, Mi Xuance's eyes gradually lost their light. It was the final radiance of a setting sun, and the last shred of life in his body dissipated. Lu Ping sighed. With a wave of his hand, Mi Xuance's corpse instantly turned into ashes, and then the ashes scattered and dispersed within the grand formation. "Let's go, Lu Xiaoyu. Let's see what exactly happened in the depths of the passage formation. Perhaps everything is about to end." Chapter 1562. Drastic Change. It was indeed a drastic change. At this time, even Lu Ping and Longhuai Ancestor had already noticed the changes in the starry sky essence qi around them. In front of Lu Ping's surprised eyes, Mi Xuance's body, which had been reduced to ashes and scattered in the void, slowly gathered together to form a stream of ash, converging in the same direction, which was the direction where Butterfly Fairy and the others had rushed to previously. Not only the body that had turned to ashes, but the starry sky essence qi in the void was also flowing towards the depths of the channel formation at an unprecedented speed, even bringing with it gusts of whistling wind. "Look over there." Looking in the direction of Longhuai Ancestor, Lu Ping was surprised to see that Jiao Doran's real arm, which he had cut off with his sword earlier, was also turning into a puff of gray fog from the outside to the inside of the channel formation. Then, it turned into a stream of ash that flowed along with the starry sky essence qi into the depths of the channel formation. Follow the direction of these gray streams. The two of them reached an agreement in an instant, and the light under their feet flickered as they headed towards the depths of the channel formation. Along the way, they saw the bodies of the cultivators who had fallen since they entered the channel formation, as well as the spiritual treasures and artifacts that had been shattered, were all moving towards the depths of the channel formation along with the streams of starry sky essence qi. The two of them had not gone far when they heard a loud roar. "Where do you think you're going?" When they turned to look, they saw a huge stream of light rushing towards the depths of the channel formation from the side of the void like a tsunami. The two of them tried their best to capture the details of the stream of light, only to find that as the essence qi in the channel formation fluctuated, their divine senses were blocked and distorted at the same time. For a moment, they could not sense who was in the stream of light. However, the loud roar just now allowed Lu Ping and Longhuai Ancestor to recognize that it was Xiang Laozu. Sure enough, they saw another stream of light chasing after the previous one. At a glance, the two streams of light looked very similar. "Is it Taoist Xiang in front?" the Longhuai Ancestor shouted. The ray of light paused for a moment, then stopped, waiting for the two of them to fly over. "It really is fellow Taoist Xiang." The three of them clasped their hands in greeting. The Longhuai Ancestor suddenly asked, "That light that just passed by, Could it be? Xiang Laozu's expression darkened. It's the ancestor Taoist Gui's real body. His physical body has obviously been turned into a puppet by someone. The old man was fighting with the ancestor's real body and tried to keep the ancestor's real body. Unexpectedly, there was a sudden change in the channel formation just now. Yuan Qi gathered, and the ancestor's real body broke free from the old man's control and flew towards the direction where the Yuan Qi gathered. The old man couldn't catch up. At this point, Xiang Laozu looked at the Longhuai ancestor and said in a low voice, "Now that the ancestor's real body puppet is here, it seems that fellow Taoists' previous guess can only be based on Peng Daoren." The Longhuai ancestor smiled bitterly like Lu Ping. Under the puzzled gaze of Xiang Laozu, the Longhuai ancestor explained, "Previously, Lu Daoyu and I had encountered the real body puppets of Peng Daoren and Zhao Daoren. The old man was only able to defeat the real body puppet of Peng Daoren with the help of fellow Taoist Mi Xuanzi. Lu Daoyu also fought against the real body puppet of Zhao Daoren for dozens of rounds." Xiang Laozu was stunned to see Lu Ping nod. He murmured, "How is that possible? If it's not Peng Daoren, not Zhao Daoren and the ancestor turtle, then who could it be?" Thinking of this, Xiang Laozu suddenly turned back and said, "Who else hasn't appeared the real body of the seventh patriarch of sky-opening sect?" The Longhuai ancestor shook his head and said, "The old man, like fellow Taoist, has always been entangled with the real body puppets of Peng and Zhao. I don't know anything else, but Lu Daoyu has seen the real bodies of other Tao ancestors." Before Xiang Laozu looked at him, Lu Ping answered, "Now I have seen 6 real bodies of the seventh patriarch of sky-opening sect. Only Taoist who is left." "Impossible. No way." The Longhuai ancestor and Xiang Laozu said almost at the same time. As soon as the words came out, they seemed to feel that it was inappropriate, so they shut their mouths at the same time. Lu Ping secretly thought that these two really knew something. Otherwise, they would not have such a reaction. So he said, "Oh? I have seen 6 real bodies of the 7th Patriarch of Sky-Opening Sect, and with the help of the other fellow Taoists, Laozu's real bodies of Luan, Ape, and Cicada were destroyed, and one arm of the real body of Zhao Daoren was cut off. 6 real bodies of the 7th Patriarch of Sky-Opening Sect have been made into puppets, and the remaining Taoist who is naturally the mastermind behind the scenes." The Longhuai ancestor and Xiang Laozu inadvertently looked at each other, and their eyes contained surprise and fear of Lu Ping's strength, but they quickly hid it. After a while, the Longhuai ancestor said, "Before Lu Daoyu came, the old man had a conversation with the mastermind when he was entangled with the real body puppets of Peng and Zhao Daoyu." The Longhuai ancestor also knew that they were facing a sky-opening sect Laozu at this time, and it was a matter of life and death. Only by sharing a common hatred for the enemy could they survive. Therefore, he told them the general situation of his conversation with the voice. When Xiang Laozu heard that the Longhuai ancestor was able to fight against the 2 most powerful Taoist puppets for such a long time, an inexplicable color flashed in his eyes, but he said, "It seems that the possibility of it being Taoist who is very small. Taoist who is a woman, but the voice you heard was a man. Moreover, judging from the extremely belittling words about Zhao Daoren, it is indeed most likely to be Peng Daoren. But is the real spirit that you saw before really Peng Daoren?" Ancestor Long Huai said, "Perhaps because of some unknown reason, this ancestor that survived has already abandoned his body, and he's trapped somewhere within the grand formation. This is also the reason why he can only control from behind the scenes and can't show himself since the heavens were split open until now. Otherwise, with the might of the 7th ancestor of creation, the lives and deaths of all living beings in this world would have been within his grasp since a long time ago. So why would he have to act so mysteriously?" Xiang Laozu also agreed. "This is the reason. If this is true, the Taoist strength must be greatly reduced after being trapped here. This may be our only chance of survival." Lu Ping sneered in his heart. If there was anyone who might know a thing or two about the secret of the passageway formation, it was probably only these 2 people in front of him, or perhaps the mysterious butterfly fairy. The future was dangerous, so Lu Ping could only be secretly vigilant. Other than the unknown enemy, he probably had to be wary of the people around him. Thinking of this, Lu Ping smiled and said, We are guessing in vain here. Perhaps the truth is right in front of us because of the drastic changes in the passageway formation. Won't it be over if we go and take a look? Xiang Laozu laughed and said, That's right, that's right. Why do we have to be so superfluous? The Longhuai ancestor also said, If it's a blessing, it's not a curse, and if it's a curse, we can't avoid it. However, it's best for us to gather as many of our fellow Taoists as possible to prevent any accidents. That's right. Lu Ping nodded. While the three of them were talking, the conveyance light under their feet was not slow at all. Suddenly, they heard a sudden dawn behind them, followed by a violent spatial vibration set off by a conveyance light. The three of them were horrified and dodged in different directions. Then they saw a platinum-colored conveyance light sweeping across the previous route of the three of them, rushing all the way to the depths of the passageway formation. Lu Ping's eyes flickered, and he heard Xiang Laozu not far away exclaim, It's Taoist Hu. This puppet is the real body of Taoist Hu. Chapter 1563. Lu Ping also saw clearly that the practitioner in the conveyance light was a dull-looking middle-aged woman. She had a thick waist and big buttocks, which reminded people of the real body of Taoist who had been made into a puppet. The three of them chased after the puppet almost at the same time, wanting to stop it. At this moment, the three of them had almost the same thought. No matter who the mastermind was, these 7 puppets were clearly their greatest enemies. If they could destroy one of them, they might be able to weaken the strength of the unknown enemy. During the chase, the three of them gradually scattered in different directions, trying to surround the real body puppet of Taoist Hu. However, the puppet suddenly sped up and was about to break out of the encirclement of the three of them, perhaps knowing the plan of the people behind them or for other reasons. At this time, a conveyance light flew toward them from the depths of the passageway formation. Lu Ping was the first to discover the identity of the person in the conveyance light. He shouted, Taoist old ape, stop the real body puppet. The person was Wise Ape. He was startled to see the 4 conveyance lights flying toward him, but when he heard Lu Ping's roar, his face lit up with joy. He straightened the 15-ton cudgel in his hand and smashed it on the head of Taoist Hu's real body puppet. The moment the 15-ton cudgel was raised, Longhuai ancestor and Xiang Laozu, who were chasing behind Taoist Hu's real body puppet, exclaimed in a low voice. Both of them looked surprised and doubtful. Although Lu Ping had seen the power of the 15-ton cudgel before, he was still amazed when he saw it again. Compared with the power of the 15-ton cudgel when it had just received Taoist Ape's legacy, the power of the 15-ton cudgel in Wise Ape's hands was undoubtedly greater. Of course, Wise Ape's strength had also increased. This was not because he had borrowed the power of Taoist Ape's 1,000-ton staff, but because his own cultivation base had increased significantly. Back then, the old ape had used the 1,000-pound rod to suppress himself, allowing him to survive 500 years and avoid the rejection of this world. However, it was also because of this that he could not continue to cultivate step by step like the true spirit cultivators who hid in the spirit dimension. When he entered the formation, the old ape's strength could only be considered average among the 18 true spirit cultivators. Even without the old macaque's 1,000-kilogram rod spiritual treasure, Yangming's abilities had been enhanced to the point where he was only a step away from the perfected first realm. Unlike the surprise of Xiang Laozu and Longhuai ancestor, Lu Ping was secretly delighted. This was because the moment the sword of true spirit stabbed Zhao Daoren, Lu Ping's natal flying sword had also changed like the 15-ton cudgel. After that, there was also a steady stream of pneuma from the flying sword into Lu Ping's body. Originally, Lu Ping was a little nervous, but judging from Wise Ape's current state, he did not have to worry so much. Although the 15-ton cudgel looked powerful and slow, it really gave people a feeling that there was no way to avoid it and they could only resist it. Taoist Hu's real body puppet seemed to be aware of this momentum. It reached out and clenched its fist. A cloud of rich origin energy surged in its hand, and an octagonal hammer more than a foot long appeared in its hand. It was similar to the heaven-opening artifact crystal hammer that Lu Ping had seen in Origin Wine Laozu's hands, except that it was slightly bigger. The moment Wise Ape swung the hammer with both hands, Taoist Hu had already pounced on Wise Ape. The real body puppet was obviously unwilling to be blocked by Wise Ape, and it was obviously ready to cut off all means of retreat. Although Wise Ape was only a step away from the fulfillment of the first realm of true spirit, it was still an insurmountable gap. With a loud bang, the crystal hammer that was condensed by the real body puppet's essence energy was smashed by the 15-ton cudgel. However, the momentum of the 15-ton cudgel was eventually blocked by the crystal hammer and could not go any further. Taking advantage of this moment, the real body puppet flashed under the 15-ton cudgel and rushed toward Wise Ape with an imposing manner. While retreating, Wise Ape tried his best to summon the 15-ton cudgel to help, but in the end, he had to take a blow from the real body puppet with his bare hands. The power of this blow was obviously beyond the old ape's expectation. It was not a pure confrontation of real essence divine sense, but a head-on contest of flesh. How could Wise Ape compete with the real body puppet of heaven-opening 7th Patriarch in terms of physical strength? If the 7 real body puppets were limited by a certain rule and could only use the strength of the first realm of true spirit, which gave Lu Ping and the others a chance to take advantage of, in terms of physical strength, the 7 real body puppets still maintained the physical strength of the 7th Patriarch of heaven-opening realm in the past. Thinking about how Lu Ping's pure yang flying sword could only penetrate a third of Zhao Doran's flesh when it stabbed into Luan Dao's flesh, and how the Laozu's bodies had been repeatedly strangled by hundreds of thousands of sword lights using the Sea of All Rivers sword technique, one could imagine how much the Laozu's bodies had been strengthened. Almost a third of the old ape's bones were broken, and its body was severely damaged. From Lu Ping's point of view, if the old ape returned to the cultivation world, it would be impossible for it to recover from its injuries. The real puppet that had broken through the obstruction was still a step too slow after all. Patriarch Long Huai was the first to make a move. The 9 branches of the 9-leaf spirit tree in his hand drew a strange trajectory, and in an instant, it actually pulled 33 clear spatial fluctuations. The spatial fluctuations did not interfere with each other, and the situation was woven into a giant net formed by spatial abilities. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat, and he secretly counted the leaves of the spiritual tree in the Longhuai ancestor's hand. Other than 2 of the 9 branches that did not have a single leaf, the other 7 branches happened to have 33 leaves. Perhaps this meant that the Longhuai ancestor had condensed 33 origin divine sense. Although the giant web formed by the spatial divine sense was exquisite, it was soon torn into pieces by the real body puppet's sharp claws under the brute force of the real body puppet. The severely injured old ape shouted with all its might, "Stop her! She's going to the depths of the passage to join the other real body puppets and protect Peng Daoran to reconstruct his body." Needless to say, Lu Ping and the other 2 would not let the real body puppet leave so easily. Just as Taoist who broke through the space network of the Longhuai ancestor, her speed inevitably slowed down. Lu Ping and Xiang Laozu had already surrounded her from both sides. Xiang Laozu shouted, and a tyrannical turtle real spirit confined the surrounding space of dozens of feet. On the other side, dense sword lights appeared in front of Lu Ping, covering half of the void. It was the metal property origin divine sense that Lu Ping had just inherited from Zhao Daoran, the innumerable sword skill. Chapter 1564. Longhuai ancestor, Xiang Laozu, and Lu Ping could be regarded as the 3 strongest people who entered the passageway formation this time. Lu Ping alone could destroy Luan Daoist's real body puppet and cut off one of Zhao Doran's arms, not to mention that the 3 of them joined forces. Although Taoist, whose real body puppet's divine sense was powerful and domineering in fights, it was quickly turned into ashes under the joint attack of the 3 people. The scattered ashes were gradually driven by the starry sky essential chi flowing in the passageway space and gradually converged into a gray stream, flowing in the direction from which Wise Ape had come. Stop those gray streams, which will also be used by Peng Daoran to shape his body. Wise Ape, who had lost most of his combat power, could only try his best to warn the other 3 people by roaring after blocking a blow from Taoist, whose real body puppet. Even the ashes of his body were not spared. The real spirit of tyrannical turtle behind Laozu directly opened its huge mouth and sucked in half of the gray stream. Lu Ping frowned and flicked his sleeves. The thick gray stream immediately became much lighter. Then Longhuai Ancestor also drew a few streams of light with the spiritual treasure in his hand. The ashes of the real body puppet were almost completely collected by the three people. At this moment, an angry roar suddenly came from the depths of the passageway formation. It seemed to be extremely angry at Lu Ping and the others for destroying Taoist, whose real body puppet, and also seemed to be annoyed at the three people for intercepting the ashes of the real body puppet. Seeing that the three people had finished casting their spells and looked at him at the same time, Wise Ape coughed up a mouthful of blood and said with a forced smile, "I know it's hard to believe, but the old man saw it with his own eyes. The bodies of the fallen Taoist friends and the puppets were all gathered there after they turned into ashes. Peng Daoren is using these things to perform the heaven-reaching secret skill to reshape his body." Wise Ape swallowed and tried hard to say, "Not only me, but Butterfly Fairy and Xiao Baiyu also saw it. We tried to stop it, but we were not strong enough. Besides, Peng Daoren and Zhao Doran's real body puppet came back to help, so I had to come out to look for you. Now Butterfly Fairy and Xiao Baiyu are doing their best to deal with it." Longhuai Ancestor directly interrupted him and said, "Are you sure it's Peng Daoren?" Xiang Laozu also asked, "Peng Doran's real body puppet is still there. If it's really Peng Daoren, what about his real body puppet? Why does he want to reshape his body? What happened to the seventh patriarch when he opened the sky?" Wise Ape smiled bitterly and said, "I don't know about this old man, but that person called himself Peng Laozu, and Butterfly Fairy seemed to believe it." Ancestor Xiang seemed to be lost in thought and said, "If it's really like this, then it looks like it's really his fellow Taoist Longhuai guest. Taoist Peng has surely lost his physical body, and he's surviving in an existence similar to a true spirit. But his strength has surely suffered great exhaustion or restriction." Wise Ape hesitated for a moment and said, "I don't know about his strength, but that old man has always been focused on building his physical body. Other than communicating with Butterfly Fairy at the beginning, he has never paid attention to us." Longhuai Ancestor thought for a while and said, "This person has set up this big plan for 30,000 years. Why would he build his physical body at this time?" Xiang Laozu's eyes lit up and said, "You mean," Longhuai Ancestor said with certainty, "he must have no choice. The 18 true spirit cultivators must have made him feel threatened. Building his physical body? He even used the ashes of his real body. It can be seen that he's in a difficult situation now." Xiang Laozu said with joy, "That's right. There's no time to lose. Let's hurry and join forces with Butterfly Fairy and the others to stop him from building his physical body. Otherwise, once he succeeds and breaks away from the barrier, even if his strength is still limited, I'm afraid we might not be his match at that time." Longhuai Ancestor nodded and said, "Even so, from what Old Ape said, the few real body puppets of the seventh patriarch, including Peng Doran's own real body, are obviously under his control now. It can be seen that the seventh patriarch had a fight here, and Peng Daoren might not be the one who benefited in the end." Lu Ping also had a guess in his heart. Seeing that the two of them had roughly guessed the matter, he simply stopped talking and flew towards the depths of the passage formation with the other three. At this time, Butterfly Fairy and Xiao Baiyu were in an extremely dangerous situation. When Peng Daoren and Zhao Daoren, who had lost an arm, came to their rescue, although they were at a disadvantage, because the two puppets had to protect the real Peng Daoren and rebuild his physical body, they could barely hold on. When Taoist Gui's real body puppet arrived, the two of them couldn't even fight back. Under the joint attack of the three real body puppets, if Butterfly Fairy and Xiao Baiyu hadn't run away in time, they would have been killed by the three puppets. Fortunately, the three puppets were only guarding Peng Daoren, who was rebuilding his physical body. Otherwise, it would have been an extravagant hope for the two of them to escape. Hopefully, the great intelligent ape could find Longhuai and the other two. Longhuai Ancestor, Xiang Laozu, and the mysterious Lu Taiping were all experts who were not weaker than her. In fact, they might even be slightly stronger than her. Therefore, if the six of them joined forces, they might have a chance. Otherwise, once Taoist Peng reconstructed his body and escaped the restraints of this world, then the quintessence of this world would be severely weakened within the passageway grand formation, and his strength would definitely rise to a terrifying level. At that time, even if the 6 of them joined forces, they would probably only be ants before him. Butterfly Fairy's eyes flickered as she constantly calculated the strength of the 2 sides in her mind. She was the leader of the insect clan in the Boundless Mountains, a direct descendant of Taoist Chan's bloodline. For tens of thousands of years, the insect clan had thrived in the Boundless Mountains and rarely intervened in the conflicts of the cultivation world. Therefore, they had always maintained a mysterious and relatively aloof position in the cultivation world. Many secrets about the ancient creation of heaven had been passed down by this clan. However, although this clan rarely appeared in the cultivation world, it didn't mean that they knew nothing about the situation in the cultivation world. On the contrary, through the Spirit Beast sect, which they secretly supported, the insect clan had spread all over the cultivation world. Therefore, the insect clan knew every move in the cultivation world like the back of their hands. Looking at the 3 puppets in front of her, the Butterfly Fairy fell into deep thought. Back then, when the 7 ancestors of sky-splitting had gathered in the passageway formation, they should have left behind some arrangements. However, from the looks of it, the arrangements left behind by the 7 ancestors had been gradually forgotten by their descendants over time. Among the 18 true spirit cultivators who entered the passage formation, perhaps only the Longhua ancestor, Xiang Laozu, and herself knew a thing or two about the passage formation. As for the others, apart from Wise Ape who had accidentally obtained Taoist Ape's legacy, Xiao Baiyu and Lu Taiping were also suspects. However, these 3 people were obviously just lucky, especially Lu Taiping, whose strength was simply incredible. She wondered what kind of legacy the Longhua ancestor and Xiang Laozu had obtained from Jiao Daoren and Taoist Gue. As the Butterfly Fairy pondered, a 3-inch-long thin needle with a strong smell of blood hovered above her head. Finally, it sank into her hair bun, but there was an inexplicable flash of color in the blood. Chapter 1565. If Lu Ping or Wise Ape had been present, they would have been able to see that the blood-dissolving needle in Butterfly Fairy's hand had become very different from before. This change was extremely similar to the changes in their own hands. Clearly, Butterfly Fairy had also obtained the legacy left behind by Taoist Chan's real body puppet. At that moment, Lu Ping and the others had already followed Wise Ape into the depths of the passageway. However, Lu Ping's attention was not on their conversation. In the core space, the sword of true spirit was like a happy fish swimming around the dragon of true spirit. Streams of pure essence dispersed from the body of the sword. After being swallowed by the dragon of true spirit, they turned into mysterious runes that were imprinted on the body of the sword. Pure young spiritual treasures could be regarded as the highest quality spiritual treasures that could be made in the cultivation world. In Lu Ping's opinion, pure young spiritual treasures should be the king of spiritual treasures. Even the famous 6 great god weapons of creation were only 6 pure young spiritual treasures. The only difference was that as the spiritual treasures in the hands of the 7th patriarch of creation, they had participated in the creation of heaven and were slightly more famous. They had been nurtured by the heaven-splitting Laozu for a longer period of time, so their quality was better and they were slightly more powerful. However, in essence, the so-called 6 great god weapons of creation and pure young spiritual treasures should be of the same level. In Lu Ping's hands, 2 pure young spiritual treasures had been born. One was the scissors mantis that had been cut in half, and the other was the pure young flying sword, Moli, which was formed from Jiao Doran's horn of real spirit. Originally, Lu Ping had expected that these 2 spiritual treasures might not be weaker than the heaven-splitting god weapons after being nurtured by his own vital energy for a long period of time. It was only when Lu Ping became a pure young spiritual treasure and came into contact with heaven-splitting god weapons such as the crystal hammer, the 7-feathered fan, and the wine cauldron of heaven and earth that he vaguely realized that these heaven-splitting god weapons were not as simple as he had imagined. When Lu Ping became a pure young spiritual treasure and truly came into contact with the origin of this world, he realized that the so-called pure young spiritual treasure might be the limit of what this world could achieve. However, the quality and power of the heaven-splitting god weapons far exceeded the limits of what this world could bear. It made sense when he thought about it. To a cultivator, becoming a pure young spiritual treasure was already the limit that this world could tolerate. Which seventh patriarch of true spirit wasn't at the fourth or fifth true spirit realm? To them, this pure young spiritual treasure was like a 2-meter-tall giant wielding a foot-long sword. How could it display even a tenth of their strength? As for the heaven-splitting god weapon that seventh patriarch of true spirit had left in this world, Lu Ping could clearly sense a great power hibernating within it. However, with Lu Ping's pure yang and true spirit cultivation at the time, he could not activate this power hibernating within the heaven-splitting god weapon. Pure yang spiritual treasures were not the peak of the heaven-splitting god weapon. Above pure yang spiritual treasures, there should be a higher quality spiritual treasure. The so-called heaven-splitting god weapon was undoubtedly a spiritual treasure of this level. However, perhaps because no one could activate it after seventh patriarch of true spirit, or perhaps because the god weapon had sealed itself to avoid the rejection of this world, people had always mistakenly thought that heaven-splitting god weapons were no different from pure yang spiritual treasures. The pure yang spiritual treasures that the cultivators of this world had refined themselves, such as the pure yang flying sword in Lu Ping's hands, the scissors in half, and so on, could not be compared to a true heaven-splitting god weapon. It was because of this that Lu Ping had a clear understanding of the true strength of seventh patriarch of true spirit and understood that he had to be respectful towards Lao Tzu of true spirit. What level would a spiritual treasure reach when it surpassed pure yang? With the increase of the mysterious runes, the aura of the sword of true spirit became stronger and stronger. Its aura became more and more unpredictable, to the point that Lu Ping had to slow down the absorption of the origin essence qi. He did not want to end up like wise old ape, unable to control the spiritual treasure in his hands because it was too powerful. However, in the perception of Lu Ping's spiritual force, Emoli, the sword spirit of the pure yang flying sword, was undergoing a huge change. If Emoli was said to have been given life and spirituality after going through the pure yang lightning tribulation, the current Emoli looked more like it had a life of its own. This feeling was extremely familiar to Lu Ping. Back in the battle under Luo Xian Mountain, the water ape of the heaven and earth wine cauldron that Lu Ping had killed with all his might was extremely similar to the current Emoli. Lu Ping could sense that the flying sword Emoli had broken away from the pure yang spiritual treasure and reached a brand new realm. This realm was like the birth of a new life. The various miracles that it had experienced during this period were still vivid in his mind, causing Lu Ping to be extremely intoxicated. Lu Ping believed that this process would definitely be an inevitable experience for his future cultivation. Today's fortuitous encounter would definitely be the key to breaking through the bottleneck of his cultivation in the future. However, Lu Ping didn't know what this magical process was and what realm Emoli had reached. Although the Soaring Dragon Galaxy scripture he inherited also included many other things from the infinite galaxy world in addition to the cultivation method, these things were more like random records and weren't systematic. Obviously, there were no records about the growth of the spirit treasures in the Soaring Dragon Galaxy scripture. Lu Ping, who had temporarily recovered, once again focused his spiritual will on the dragon of true spirit. After cutting off one of the arms of Jiao Doran's true spirit puppet, a pure origin essence was injected into the dragon of true spirit through the sword of true spirit. This origin essence was different from before. Previously, every time Lu Ping completely broke the origin magic of Jiao Doran's true spirit puppet, the origin magic would be injected into Lu Ping's heart space as origin magic. Then, according to Lu Ping's will, it would turn into his own origin magic for his own use. However, this time, after the origin essence was injected into Lu Ping's body, it did not flow along his blood vessels towards his heart space. Instead, it seeped into his flesh and blood from his blood vessels. Under the observation of Lu Ping's spiritual will, he could clearly sense that his physical body was being strengthened at an unbelievable speed. As Lu Ping's physical body strengthened, his control over his origin magic seemed to have increased as well. The aura that was initially difficult to control due to the sudden increase in his strength was now released and withdrawn at will. The restrained aura made Lu Ping look more and more unfathomable. Wise Old Ape was still unaware, while Longhuai Ancestor and Xiang Laozu frequently looked at Lu Ping in astonishment. However, compared to Lu Ping's control over his own strength, Lu Ping was more concerned about the fact that after his physical body strengthened, he was able to suppress and control the flying sword in his heart space, which had grown to an unknown level. Chapter 1566. Wise Ape had been seriously injured repeatedly, and it was especially so after Daoist, whose attack caused his body to be damaged. His strength had been reduced to less than a tenth of his original strength, and the only thing he could do now was to lead the way for Patriarch Long Huai and the others. But at this moment, Lu Ping, who was immersed in the excitement of his strength growth, was shocked. When his divine thoughts returned, his eyes suddenly emitted a sword-like light. Not only Lu Ping, but Longhuai Ancestor and Xiang Laozu also stopped their conveyance light almost at the same time. Only Wise Ape continued to fly forward as if he had not noticed it. There wasn't the slightest sign of this crisis, and Patriarch Long Huai and the others only noticed it at the moment of life and death. It was already too late for them to warn Wise Old Ape at this moment. Senior Ape Little, it was too late for Lu Ping to warn Ling Ming Old Ape. The void that Ling Ming Old Ape was flying towards suddenly collapsed, and countless spatial fragments instantly formed into a dense mass of deadly weapons. Wise Old Ape tried his best to struggle, but the collapsed space firmly imprisoned his body. It was as if he had fallen into a quagmire. The more he struggled, the deeper he sank. The spatial flying blades flew over, and Wise Old Ape only had time to cry out, "Help!" Then, he was drowned in the flying blade storm with a series of crisp, clanging sounds. Not even his bones were left, leaving only a 1,000-pound staff that surpassed a pure young spiritual treasure unscathed under the slash of the spatial trap. Ancestor Long Huai's group of 3 had barely brushed shoulders with the god of death, and at this moment, even they themselves felt an extreme lingering fear, and they felt a lingering fear in their hearts when they saw Wise Ape's miserable state. Even they themselves were in such a state, so how could they have the strength to rescue Wise Ape? After a long time, Ancestor Long Huai slowly let out a breath of cold air, and then he said, "What a brilliant spatial trap. It almost deceived all of us as well." Xiang Laozu sighed and said, "Yes, it's a pity that Taoist Old Ape, we couldn't save you in time." Lu Ping's expression was much more serious. Looking at the space trap in front of him, he said, "This danger came so suddenly. How could our whereabouts be so accurately calculated?" Longhuai Ancestor was shocked and said, "Lu Dao means." Xiang Laozu continued Longhuai Ancestor's words and said in a deep voice, "Our whereabouts have fallen into Peng Doran's eyes. Was this space trap set by him on the spot?" Seeing the disbelief on progenitor Xiang's face, Lu Ping asked, "If that's not the case, why would we not be able to save Senior Old Ape in time?" Xiang Laozu believed most of it, but he was still unwilling to believe it. He said, "This person's supernatural power has actually reached such a level. What should we do?" Longhuai Ancestor glanced at Xiang Laozu and said, "If it's really as Taoist Old Ape said, once that person succeeds in shaping his body, I'm afraid we'll be in a more passive position. We have to speed up." Xiang Laozu pointed at the 1,000-pound stick spiritual treasure in the space trap that was gradually recovering and said, "What should we do with this thing?" At this moment, Butterfly Fairy's face was so gloomy that it could drip water. She did not expect that she and Xiao Baiyu would still fall into Peng Doran's trap despite being so careful. Moreover, it was under the condition that he had not finished shaping his body. Previously, when she thought that she could not defeat the puppets made by the Sky Splitter Laozu's real body, she and Xiao Baiyu retreated far away to monitor them. They quietly waited for Wise Old Ape to summon Longhuai Ancestor and the others as soon as possible. Unexpectedly, before Peng Doran had condensed his body, his real spirit, which had gradually begun to break free from the restraints of the world's origin, could unexpectedly set up a void trap without anyone's help. It almost trapped Butterfly Fairy and Xiao Baiyu in it. In the end, although Butterfly Fairy escaped the trap of the void by a hair's breadth and protected Xiao Baiyu beside her with her keen senses, the 3 puppets took the opportunity to launch an attack. In addition, the real spirit of Taoist Peng, who was condensing his physical body, condensed a magical power to launch a sneak attack from time to time. So they were still trapped in the battle matrix. You juniors were able to reach this step and force me to such a state. You can be said to be top-notch existences in this world. If it was at the beginning of the world, perhaps I would have cherished your talents. Unfortunately, although you didn't ruin my great plan, you have greatly delayed my plan. Even if you die 100 times, it will not be enough to atone for your mistakes. Therefore, all of you must die. In the void thousands of feet away, the starry sky Yuan Qi that had gathered from the grand array was mixed with the corpses of fallen cultivators, fragments of broken spirit treasures, and so on. Everything that contained spiritual qi and profound qi was absorbed by the starry sky Yuan Qi. Finally, it condensed in this place, forming a mass of indistinct and chaotic liquid that seemed to be a mixture of various colors. However, within this mass of liquid, a vague silhouette started to emerge. This silhouette continued to absorb the surrounding primal chaos essence liquid. From time to time, it would take the shape of a human, and from time to time, it would take the shape of a rock. As the starry sky essence Qi gathered around it, it started to grow more and more corporeal. Butterfly Fairy's blood-melting needle was once again blocked by Taoist Gui's real puppet. Although she hated Taoist Gui, it was too late for her to react, because Zhao Daoran had already lunged at her with his sword. One of Zhao Daoran's arms was cut off by Lu Ping, which greatly weakened his strength, but Taoist Gui's real puppet was not damaged at all. Under the joint attack of the two, Butterfly Fairy was still at a disadvantage, even though she had tried her best. During the process of killing Taoist Gui's real puppet, the power of her blood-melting needle had been greatly enhanced by the legacy left by Taoist Gui, just like the Qianjun cudgel and the flying sword Emoli. However, at this time, Taoist Gui's real puppet happened to be the bane of the blood-melting needle, because of its strong physical body. Taoist Gui's real puppet only cared about the protection of its origin, while layers of essence energy armor were attached to its back, making it look like a thick turtle shell. No matter how fast the blood-melting needle attacked, it just shielded its eyes with both hands and blocked the attack. Amidst the tinkling noises, this famous heaven-splitting divine weapon might have become faster and more powerful after absorbing the power left by Priest Chan in his puppet form, but it could do nothing to Priest Gui, who possessed a strong physical body. Every time it failed, it would return in failure. Zhao Daoran's real puppet would always seize the opportunity to attack, which put Butterfly Fairy in a very passive position. She could only choose to dodge and retreat, but Taoist Gui and Zhao Daoran, who were besieging her, kept pressing on. The blood-melting needle. Are you Xiaochan's descendant? The voice came from the chaotic source liquid, which was rebuilding the body. I didn't expect that Xiaochan not only left the blood-melting needle, but also left such a trump card for her descendant, completely awakening the power of the blood-melting needle. The voice paused, then sneered. But does she think she can do anything to the old man by leaving behind an acquired spirit treasure? What a joke. How many % of the power of an acquired spirit treasure can a cultivator who has barely completed the first level of the true spirit realm unleash? With a murderous look in her eyes, the Butterfly Fairy cast a glance at Peng Daoran, whose body was gradually being rebuilt in the chaotic source liquid. She knew that all this was under Peng Daoran's control. Otherwise, how could the turtle and the flood dragon, two mindless puppets, have such a tacit understanding, rendering her powerless to fight back? Of course, the Butterfly Fairy knew that Peng Daoran's true spirit was actually stalling for time. Once his true spirit broke free from the source of this world and merged with the rebuilt body, they would probably be no match for even one of Peng Daoran's fingers. However, at this time, the Butterfly Fairy could not even protect herself, let alone have the strength to interrupt Peng Daoran's rebuilding body. As for Xiao Baiyu on the other side, at this time, he was also retreating in front of the puppet made by the real body that Taoist Peng abandoned. It was not enough for him to protect himself, let alone interrupt the reconstruction of Taoist Peng's physical body. You're a human cultivator who mainly cultivates the rock bloodline, but you're actually walking the path of that four-legged snake. You really don't know what's good for you. Peng Daoren obviously hated Xiao Baiyu. At this time, the butterfly fairy could only place her hopes on the Longhuai ancestor and the others. If they could arrive before Peng Daoren's body was rebuilt, they might have a chance of survival. Chapter 1567. You have my bloodline, but you went to learn that four-legged snake swordsmanship. How can I let you do that? Peng Daoren's attention quickly shifted from Butterfly Fairy to Xiao Baiyu. The puppet's various magical powers immediately increased the pressure on Xiao Baiyu. Peng Daoren and Jiao Daoren had been enemies for a lifetime, and they hated each other to the extreme. This was an open secret in the cultivation world. Now that he saw that Xiao Baiyu mainly cultivated the Peng bloodline but walked the path of a sword cultivator, and his swordsmanship and magical powers were very impressive, in the eyes of Peng Daoren, it was as if the inheritance he left behind was not as good as Jiao Daoren's swordsmanship and magical powers in the eyes of the living beings in this world. There was no more insult to make him angry. Peng Daoren had abandoned his physical body and refined it into a puppet along with the bodies of the other 6 heaven-opening Laozu. But in terms of control of the 7 heaven-opening bodies, it was naturally the body that originally carried his true spirit. Xiao Baiyu was beaten up by Peng Daoren's puppet almost at the beginning. Although the broken sword in his hand was sharp, and his swordsmanship and magical powers were also very fierce, under the puppet's crazy attack, there was almost no room for him to fight back. Almost all of his swordsmanship and magical powers were predicted by the puppet before he attacked, and then immediately used one or several restraining magical powers, causing Xiao Baiyu to be restrained everywhere and almost vomit blood. Hee, that four-legged snake fought with me dozens of times back then, and I already know all of his means. After tens of thousands of years of inheritance and evolution, these magical powers are, after all, still the same. Today, the old man will let you know that these means of yours are simply a joke in the eyes of the old man. You have been on the wrong path from the beginning. Xiao Baiyu did not say a word. In fact, he could not defend himself even if he wanted to now. The magical powers of Peng Daoren's real puppet were like fierce winds and huge waves, crashing towards him one after another. Even if Xiao Baiyu tried his best to dodge, he would be smashed to pieces if he made the slightest mistake, let alone think about fighting back. This Peng Daoren seemed to have made up his mind to show in front of Xiao Baiyu that his inheritance was far beyond Jiao Daoren's, and as a cultivator of the rock bloodline, it was an unforgivable fallacy to cultivate the magical powers of Jiao Daoren. Therefore, Peng Daoren only dazzled the magical powers, breaking all of Xiao Baiyu's magical powers, but he did not completely obliterate Xiao Baiyu at the first moment. Xiao Baiyu was in a sorry state, but what was even more difficult for him to accept was Peng Daoren's insulting method. It was like a cat toying with a mouse. Peng Daoren could have easily defeated him with his real puppet, but he chose to play with him in such a way. Xiao Baiyu had run amok in the world all his life and had never suffered such humiliation before. The real puppet brought with it a 7-colored brilliance, and the entire space began to distort. Xiao Baiyu felt a strange suction force trying to suck him in, and then he was completely crushed. The barrier of sword light that he had constructed with the heaven-splitting sword had already disintegrated when this strange magical power struck him. Useless chickens and pottery dogs, not worth mentioning. Did that four-legged snake leave all of you with these broken things? As soon as Peng Daoren finished speaking, he saw Xiao Baiyu, who was gradually being restrained by his own magical power, suddenly move with his sword, turning into a spinning top in the void. The heaven-splitting sword swept up a storm of sword light with Xiao Baiyu as the center. At first glance, it was somewhat similar to Lu Ping's all rivers into the sea sword technique. However, this sword technique was extremely fierce. It was a supreme sword technique of the metal attribute. It was more ferocious than the Sea of 100 Rivers sword technique, but it lacked the gentle harmony of the water attribute and the gradual progression of the sword technique. This storm of sword light suddenly arose and directly shattered the divine ability executed by Taoist Peng, and its remaining momentum didn't stop as it surged and charged towards the true body puppet. Shockingly, it seemed as if both sides would suffer heavy injuries. You're using this kind of magical power? Junior, can your body withstand it? When Peng Daoren saw this magical power, his tone unconsciously became a bit solemn, as if he was extremely familiar with the power of this magical power. However, perhaps because he was too familiar with it, Taoist Peng did not expect that Xiao Baiyu would display this kind of swordsmanship. This kind of swordsmanship was fierce and fierce. Although it was often impossible for the opponent to avoid it, it was more based on the practitioner's physical body. It was really a kind of swordsmanship that hurt both the opponent and the practitioner. From Peng Doran's point of view, Xiao Baiyu was a minor repairs cultivator who had not even reached the peak of the first realm of the true spirit realm. No matter how strong his body was, it would not be able to support this magical power at all. If he forcefully used it, his body would collapse before he could injure anyone. But now that Xiao Baiyu had begun to go all out, his temperament was so strong that he was becoming more and more similar to the four-legged snake. Bullshit sword cultivator. Bullshit one sword breaking all laws. So, the best way was to eradicate the obstacles in front of him as much as possible before the three people arrived, and Xiao Baiyu was undoubtedly the weakest among the five people at this time. Chapter 1568. Xiao Baiyu's body was collapsing. The powerful swordsmanship was far beyond the limit of what his body could bear. A storm of sword light swept over, but Peng Doran's puppet didn't seem to deliberately dodge. Instead, it confronted Xiao Baiyu head-on. The silver sword light exploded, and one sword light after another rang out like shattering porcelain. However, the boundless sword light continued to encircle the puppet, and the protective spell that the puppet had cast up before this grew dimmer and dimmer as if it would collapse at any moment. Xiao Baiyu's body was twisting like a towel that was about to be wrung dry. Blood seeped out of his pores and soaked his clothes. He looked as if he had fallen into a red dye vat. His skin and flesh gradually began to loosen, as if they were about to peel off from his bones. Cracking noises kept coming out of his body, which was the sound of bones breaking. Boy, how much longer can you hold on? Peng Doran's complacent voice lingered in Xiao Baiyu's ears like a nightmare, continuously disintegrating Xiao Baiyu's will. Xiao Baiyu dared not to refute, fearing that once he opened his mouth, he would spit out a mouthful of blood. He had to save his last breath. As his body continued to collapse, he could only try his best to maintain the condition of his internal organs. Only then might he have a chance to survive. He can't hold on for long. How long can your puppet last? Xiao Baiyu couldn't say a word. The butterfly fairy was also in a difficult situation, but she could still talk. Although Taoist Gui's puppet was able to restrain the divine blood needle in her hand, Taoist Gui's abilities were equally lacking compared to the two puppets. Butterfly Fairy indeed couldn't break the defensive magic of Taoist Gui's puppet, and Taoist Gui's puppet couldn't do anything to Butterfly Fairy, who was as elusive as a ghost. Fortunately, there was Jiao Daoren, who had lost an arm. Although Jiao Daoren's puppet had lost a lot of its magic power after fighting against the Longhuai ancestor and Lu Ping, and its strength was greatly reduced, after joining hands with Taoist Gui's puppet, the Butterfly Fairy was still forced to flee in all directions, not daring to fight the two head-on. How dare you? Peng Daoren suddenly roared. The Butterfly Fairy felt as if her head was suddenly hit by a sledgehammer. Her head instantly turned into paste, and she didn't know what was going on. Suddenly, she felt a stabbing pain in her heart. She suddenly realized that she was in a life-or-death situation, and she had no idea what was going on. It had only been a split second since the Butterfly Fairy was attacked by Peng Doran's spiritual power and suddenly woke up. Jiao Daoren, who had lost an arm, had seized the opportunity to launch a sneak attack. The protective magic Butterfly Fairy cast had been silently broken, and a long sword condensed from profound chi was already 3 feet away from her. The Butterfly Fairy's expression changed drastically. At the moment of life and death, she suddenly closed her arms, and 2 snow-white long sleeves floated out, as if countless white butterflies had built a wall in front of her. The sword momentum of Jiao Daoren's puppet did not change. The white butterfly wall was shattered in an instant, and the snow-white long sleeves were shredded into snowflakes, drifting in all directions. However, the butterfly fairy, who had been hiding behind the butterfly wall, was nowhere to be seen. After dodging Zhao Doran's determined sword strike, before the butterfly fairy could relax a little, a stabbing pain several times more painful than the previous one appeared in her heart again. The butterfly fairy looked over in horror, only to see that the moment Zhao Doran's puppet launched its attack, Taoist Gui's puppet had slapped away the needle with a single palm. The burning blood needle, which had absorbed the essence left by Taoist Chan and had become much more powerful, had been reduced to a faint puff in the dense blood-red mist around it. The butterfly fairy recalled the stabbing pain in her heart that woke her up after Pang Doran's roar flashed across her mind. Presumably, the moment the needle protected its master, the burning blood needle lost a lot of its spirituality, giving Taoist Gui's puppet a chance to take advantage of it. Before Butterfly Fairy could recall the needles, Taoist Gui's puppet had already raised a tortoise shell and charged at her with a rumbling sound. The Butterfly Fairy's face paled. She knew that she would not be able to escape this time. Even so, she still tried her best to activate her defensive magic, not daring to give up the slightest chance of survival. Amidst the deafening rumble, the Butterfly Fairy felt as if she had been knocked away by a huge mountain. In a daze, she suddenly realized that she did not seem to have suffered the fatal injury she had imagined. At least, the injury was much lighter than she had imagined. The Butterfly Fairy tried her best to pull herself together. Although her internal energy was not enough for the moment because of the heavy blow, she gradually regained control of her flung body. She struggled to raise her head and saw Longhuai Ancestor waving the 9-leaved spirit tree to suppress Zhao Doran's puppet, while on the other side, Taoist Gui's puppet collided with Xiang Laozu's true spirit, causing the earth to shake and the mountains to shake. At the critical moment of life and death, it turned out that Longhuai Ancestor and Xiang Laozu had arrived, saving the Butterfly Fairy from a fatal injury. By this time, the Butterfly Fairy had gathered the scattered internal energy in her body to counteract the tremendous force of the collision. She scanned her entire body with her divine consciousness and found that only her internal organs were slightly injured, which was not serious. At least, she still had 70 to 80% of her combat strength. She could not help but sigh in relief. From a distance came Pang Doran's exasperated roar. Obviously, the timely arrival of Longhuai Ancestor and the others had ruined Pang Doran's attempt to kill the Butterfly Fairy and Xiao Baiyu. Thinking of Xiao Baiyu, the Butterfly Fairy was shocked. She turned to look in the direction of the battle between Xiao Baiyu and Pang Doran's puppet, only to see Xiao Baiyu floating in the void thousands of feet away, covered in blood. From a distance, his body was twisted like a ferocious ghost, and it was hard to tell whether he was dead or alive. The Butterfly Fairy's heart skipped a beat. At this time, both sides were at the critical moment of life and death. Every bit of combat strength must be cherished. Although Xiao Baiyu's cultivation was not as good as hers, as a sword cultivator, Xiao Baiyu's strength was still extremely powerful. If Xiao Baiyu died, her side's chances of winning would undoubtedly be reduced. A series of explosions like firecrackers rang out, and the Butterfly Fairy was shocked. Only then did she find that in the void behind Xiao Baiyu, a sword light bloomed like a lotus. In the haze, two figures entered and left the void in the sword light, chasing each other. And the figure being chased was like a headless fly, fleeing randomly. It was Pang Doran's puppet. Chapter 1569. After all, Lu Ping and the others were a step too late. Although Longhuai Ancestor and Xiang Laozu joined hands to save Butterfly Fairy, Xiao Baiyu's body was almost on the verge of collapse because he forcibly used the heaven-opening sword art. Lu Ping saved Xiao Baiyu at the last moment, but at this time, he only had a pure strand of Jin Yuan left to protect his internal organs, so that the core space was not damaged. However, Xiao Baiyu's outburst was not entirely in vain. At least when Lu Ping took over, Pang Doran's puppet was also riddled with holes by Xiao Baiyu's heaven-opening sword art. Although the puppet still had the power to fight, it was no longer enough to fight against Lu Ping, who was now much stronger and more energetic. At this time, Lu Ping had completed the absolute suppression of Pang Doran's puppet. Taking the opportunity, he glanced at Longhuai Ancestor. When the three of them arrived here and saw the situation clearly, Lunghuai Ancestor and Xiang Laozu eagerly rushed to Jiao Daoren and Taoist Gue, leaving Peng Doran's puppet, which was seriously injured by Xiao Baiyu, to Lu Ping. It seemed that both of them had chosen the strongest opponents, but in fact, they coveted the benefits of the two puppets. Even so, the three of them were still a little unwilling. If only they had come a little earlier. Not to save Xiao Baiyu, but because the three of them might have had enough time to stop Peng Daoren from rebuilding his body. At this moment, it was already too late for all of them to abandon the remaining three true body puppets to stop Daoist Peng from reconstructing his body. Under Daoist Peng's control, these three true body puppets would definitely fight them to the death. If they didn't completely destroy these three true body puppets, then they wouldn't be able to concentrate all their strength to stop Daoist Peng from reconstructing his body. The condensed starry sky essence energy had gradually formed a human figure. Peng Doran's true spirit, which had broken free from the shackles of this world's origin, had already entered it. The humanoid figure suddenly moved like a puppet, but it still kept shaking every part of its body, as if familiarizing itself with every part of its body. However, although the rapidly condensed starry sky essence energy could condense into a humanoid figure, it could not transform into a corporeal body. However, the reconstruction of Daoist Peng's body wasn't complete. Large amounts of starry sky origin she condensed into liquid-like objects that floated in the air and constantly changed shape. Then, as Daoist Peng adapted to his body, the strands of the liquid adhered to his body. At the same time, the body constantly changed in height and weight. It was as if Daoist Peng was not only adapting to his new body, but also transforming it so that it was more suitable for the characteristics of his true soul. The butterfly fairy, who had just recovered, suddenly shone with a strange light when she heard about baleful beings. She seemed to know what baleful beings were. She then raised the blood-killing needle again. The blood-red mist on it had already faded a lot. She then leapt towards Daoist Gue's puppet. At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly sensed that the bloody aura permeating from the blood-killing needle in the butterfly fairy's hand seemed to be quite similar to that baleful being's. But in terms of the heart-palpitating aura, they could not be mentioned in the same breath. Peng Doran's body had basically been rebuilt, but Peng Daoren did not control his body to launch a devastating thunderous strike against Lu Ping and the others. Instead, he continued to gather the starry sky yuan qi around him. At this time, the starry sky yuan qi he gathered was even denser than before, and even formed a flowing river of yuan qi. At the same time, the baleful beings, which had been accumulating for countless years, spread to Peng Doran's entire body the moment it dripped onto his yuan qi body, then disappeared into his body. Only the skin color of his reconstructed body seemed to darken a lot in an instant. At this moment, a weird and evil smile suddenly appeared on the face of Peng Doran's reconstructed body. The moment the baleful beings merged with Peng Doran's body, the river of yuan qi that had been condensed around his body began to rustle. As if someone had combed through the void, the starry sky yuan qi flowed back to its original place and gradually began to form 7 rivers of yuan qi of different colors. 7 colors, that's right, they were 7 distinct yuan qi rivers, representing gold, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, and ice respectively. The starry sky yuan qi meandered through the void, like a rainbow streaking across the sky. Several kinds of essence air currents rose around the real body puppet, trying to suppress and expel these foreign things on its body. But these branches and vines had already penetrated into the flesh and blood of the real body. If it wanted to pull them out, it would bring up a large amount of flesh and blood. If it wanted to suppress it, it found that its essence was all absorbed by these branches and gradually began to disintegrate the real body puppet from the inside. Zhao Doran's real body puppet was at a loss for a moment, but Longhuai Ancestor wanted to end the battle quickly. He continuously cast a few spells, and the real body puppet was finally torn apart. At the same time when Zhao Doran's real body puppet collapsed, 6 or 7 light balls with different colors flew out of the puppet and flew in different directions of the passage formation. Lu Ping and Longhuai Ancestor exclaimed almost at the same time because they could clearly see that each of these 6 or 7 light balls was wrapped in a seed of the original magic power. The two of them made a move to snatch it at the same time. Longhuai Ancestor grabbed 3 magic power seeds in a row because he was close to the water pavilion. Then, Lu Ping grabbed 2 magic power seeds that flew in his direction. One of the remaining 2 was grabbed by Butterfly Fairy, who was helping Xiang Laozu, while the other one flew towards Xiao Baiyu, who had just woken up after being seriously injured. However, Longhuai Ancestor and Lu Ping no longer cared about the magic power seeds that flew out. Instead, they focused on the dismembered real body of Jiao Daoran. As both of them had benefited from Jiao Daoran's real body, if 7 magic power seeds burst out from his body, it was hard to say whether there were other magic power seeds hidden in his body. Although the two of them tried to snatch Longhuai Ancestor's body, they restrained each other and did not start a conflict because of this. At this moment, another deafening boom rang out. The real body puppet of Taoist Gu A, which had already been pierced by Butterfly Fairy countless times with the blood-burning needles with Xiang Laozu's blood-burning needles, became increasingly fragile. Finally, under the continuous attacks of Xiang Laozu's real body, it began to collapse. Then, Xiang Laozu suddenly raised his hand and cast something in the air. Butterfly Fairy, who was standing not far away from him, suddenly let out a cry of surprise. Her body flashed, and she was already hundreds of meters away from Xiang Laozu. A light blue square pot with a white base appeared in the hole above Laozu's head. The lid of the pot opened by itself, and a stream of power of 5 elements swirled out of the pot, rolling up the collapsed real body of Taoist Gui's real body into the pot one by one. Then, the lid fell back down by itself. The whole pot swayed slightly, as if someone was making a pot of good tea. Only a moment later, the pot suddenly tilted slightly, as if an invisible hand had grabbed the handle. A stream of sticky, 5-colored liquid dripped down from the spout of the pot and sank directly into Xiang Laozu's head. The cauldron of creation. Is this the cauldron of fortune? Butterfly Fairy murmured to herself, looking at the square pot floating above Xiang Laozu's head. Lu Ping and Longhuai Ancestor had already divided up Jiao Daoran's real body before it turned into ashes. Seeing Laozu cast out the square pot and stored Taoist Gui's real body in it, Longhuai Ancestor also exclaimed in amazement, "The cauldron of fortune! The cauldron of fortune!" This was also the first time for Lu Ping to see this cauldron of fortune, but as a top alchemist in this world, he had long recognized it after being influenced by the legends about this cauldron of fortune. Good, 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 good. The cauldron of fortune. Do you think you can do anything to me just because you've left something behind? 30,000 years ago, I was able to become the final victor in this passageway formation, and today, I can also achieve my wish. The 6 of you were no match for me when you were alive. So do you think that the descendants you left behind will be able to compete with me after you died? The colorful streams of power began to pour into Peng Doran's body, which was condensed from the starry sky power of living beings. As the seeds of power were successfully condensed in Peng Doran's body, Peng Doran's new body grew stronger and stronger. Seeing that his enemies, who had been transformed into puppets by Peng Doran, had actually left something behind to deal with him, Peng Doran couldn't help but laugh in anger. Chapter 1571. At this moment, Peng Doran was like a spectator, watching his opponents break through the obstacles he had set up one after another. He also watched those who had lost to him in the past not rest in peace even after death. They just had to leave a backup plan, using every possible way to make the latecomers continue to go against him. There was no longer the infuriating feeling of watching one opponent after another play tricks on him while he remained indifferent. However, Taoist Peng just happened to be like this at this moment. The ants before him were clearly pitifully weak, but Taoist Peng had no choice but to let them continue. I'll let you, ants, be proud for a while. When my body is completed, my divine power will be attached to me, and I'll communicate with the innate origin. Then I'll turn this world back into chaos with a flip of my hand. So what? Lu Ping, who had divided up Jiao Doran's true spirit body, and Longhuai ancestor had tacitly separated. Xiang Laozu, Butterfly Fairy, and Peng Daoran each occupied one side. They surrounded Peng Daoran, who was pouring divine power into his reconstructed body, from a distance. With a thought, Lu Ping turned slightly and stretched out his hand. A ball of light flashing with pure yuan qi fell into his hand. It was a divine power seed. When Lu Ping looked up, he saw Xiao Baiyu barely raising his head and nodding slightly at him. In the process of raising his head, Lu Ping had already seen that his head and body had presented an extremely exaggerated angle. It could be seen what kind of price Xiao Baiyu had paid for this action. Lu Ping's heart sank. Xiao Baiyu's injury was obviously more serious than he had imagined. With the damage to his body, at least in this world, he could no longer recover, unless he gave up this body and possessed it with his true spirit. But in this case, it would probably be difficult for him to make any progress in the future. Of course, if they charged out of the restraints of this world, perhaps there were treasures of heaven and earth in the boundless starry sky that could bring the dead back to life. Or perhaps there were great powers and divine abilities that could bring the dead back to life. However, even this kind of assumption had to be established on the basis that they defeated Taoist Peng before them. The moment the divine power seed fell into Lu Ping's hand, it then flowed along with the true essence in his bloodline. This divine power seed had already been refined before it entered the core space, and then it was swallowed and transformed by the true spirit of the true spirit. Finally, it became the third earth attribute divine power of the true spirit. At the same time, Lu Ping's body also changed. After refining the essence of Jiao Doran's arm, Lu Ping's body had become much stronger. This time, the part of Jiao Doran's true body that he had snatched this time quickly released a ball of rich bloodline essence. This essence was not like the divine power seed, which could directly enhance a cultivator's cultivation base and divine power. Instead, it directly acted on Lu Ping's body, making it stronger again. It was the same for him, and it was probably the same for Patriarch Longhuai. When Lu Ping raised his head and looked at the Longhuai ancestor, he happened to meet the gaze of the Longhuai ancestor. The two of them smiled tacitly, but their eyes were flickering with inexplicable colors. Just as Lu Ping was about to look away, he saw the beautiful eyes of the butterfly fairy on the other side. She then flicked the divine power seed that was wrapped in pure yuan qi in her hand, and it flew towards the hand of the Longhuai ancestor with a stream of light in the air. A look of surprise flashed across the face of the Longhuai ancestor, but it was immediately replaced by a look of joy. He shook the spirit tree in his hand, and the divine power seed immediately fell on a branch and turned into a small sprout. Lu Ping took a glance and saw that there were more than 30 leaves on the spirit tree. There were 2 young leaves, one big and one small, but they were much smaller than the 30 leaves, and 2 new sprouts. The 4 young leaves and sprouts that were not yet fully grown were of different sizes. It meant that after the Longhuai ancestor obtained the legacy of the 4 original divine powers of the Longhuai ancestor, it was not like Lu Ping who could directly turn it into his own. Instead, it had to slowly go through the process of condensation, gestation, and growth. Even so, this process was many times faster than the Longhuai ancestor's own cultivation. Lu Ping's eyes sparkled. He did not know why he could directly turn Jiao Doran's original divine power into his own, but the Longhuai ancestor was a lot slower. However, his attention was immediately attracted by Xiang Laozu's loud shout. He is relying on the 7 origin rivers to condense his original divine power. We can't let him recover his 7 original divine powers to the perfection realm. Once Peng Daoran recovers his 7th true spirit realm strength, we will definitely die without a burial. As the 7 different colored origin rivers slowly poured into Peng Doran's reconstructed body, Peng Doran's aura grew stronger and the 7 origin rivers became dimmer. The butterfly fairy was the first to launch an attack. This time, the layer of blood-red light on the surface of the blood transformation needle disappeared for some reason, leaving only a silver ray of light in the air. The needle headed directly for the core space where Taoist Peng's body was being reconstructed. However, when the heaven-splitting divine weapon was several dozen meters away from Peng Daoran, it was stopped by an invisible force, causing the needle to slow down. The butterfly fairy's expression did not change, as if she had already expected this. With a flick of her jade-like fingers, the blood transformation needle suddenly shook, and a thick mist of blood exploded from the body of the spiritual treasure. The blood transformation needle, which was originally imprisoned in midair, seemed to have broken free from the restraints of the 5 elements and suddenly rushed forward dozens of feet. The sudden eruption of the blood transformation needle clearly caused Peng Daoren to be slightly surprised, but it was only a slight surprise. Peng Daoren only waved his hand, and the blood transformation needle that had shot forward several dozen meters became powerless once again, floating in the air. Even a trace of seriousness flashed across the butterfly fairy's face. The blood transformation needle was the best at breaking through various defensive divine powers, but she never thought that even if she played some tricks, it would be so futile in the face of absolute strength. However, what made her even more uneasy was that not only was the blood-dissolving needle blocked, but the restraining force had also begun to imprison the heaven-splitting artifact. Butterfly Fairy might not be able to retrieve the heaven-splitting artifact even if she wanted to. However, although the Butterfly Fairy looked serious, she did not panic, because the moment she made her move, Xiang Laozu, who was in another direction, made his move almost at the same time. Xiang Laozu was using the Furnace of Fortunes, a heaven-splitting divine weapon that could even easily refine Taoist Gui's real body. Chapter 1572. The Good Fortune Divine Furnace, also known as the Good Fortune Cauldron, actually looked very much like a kettle. After the seventh ancestor created the world and imparted the Tao, this first alchemy cauldron had never appeared in the cultivation world again. Therefore, there had always been a rumor in the cultivation world that this divine artifact had left this world with Taoist Gui. However, no one had expected that the Ba Gui clan had secretly guarded this divine artifact for tens of thousands of years without anyone knowing. However, when this heaven-opening artifact reappeared in the cultivation world after tens of thousands of years, the first thing it did was to refine the original owner's body into a cluster of 5-colored origin and inject it into Xiang Laozu's body. At this time, Xiang Laozu's figure became more and more burly, and the aura around him became more and more condensed. From a distance, he looked like a majestic mountain peak. The Good Fortune Cauldron was brought up again, and in an instant, the lid of the cauldron was lifted outwards. A magical force overflowed from the cauldron, and then through the void, the spiritual chi that bound the blood transformation needle suddenly leaked out and was drawn into the Good Fortune Cauldron by this force. Butterfly Fairy took this opportunity to regain control of the blood transformation needle, but she did not attack Peng Daoren again. Instead, she shook her hand and withdrew the needle. At the same time, Longhuai Ancestor also brought up a giant cauldron, and the same 7-colored brilliance swept across the air. The starry sky essence chi that had gathered around Peng Daoren's body seemed to have been swept away, and at the same time, the 7 kinds of spiritual chi that had been clearly sorted out scattered and merged into one again, causing Peng Daoren to feel both shocked and angry. "I can't believe this thing is in your hands," Peng Daoren said coldly, with obvious sarcasm in his words. Lu Ping looked at the familiar thing in front of him, and his expression changed slightly. At this time, there were 4 apes jumping up and down on the carvings on the cauldron. When they saw Lu Ping from a distance, they bared their teeth and their faces were full of hatred and hostility. If this was not the heaven-opening artifact, the wine cauldron of heaven and earth, which Lu Ping had killed a water ape, then what was it? As the treasure of Wuxing School, the wine cauldron of heaven and earth should have been in the hands of Guangyuan Laozu, but now it was in the hands of Longhuai Ancestor. When the formation shield was broken, the 7th Patriarch's body puppet attacked and everyone fell into chaos. Guangyuan Laozu, who was seriously injured, should have died at that time, and the cauldron of Longhuai. The cauldron of cauldrons should have fallen. The Cauldron of Good Fortune was the #1 pill furnace in the world. It could absorb the starry sky origin chi to refine it. This wine cauldron was the best at controlling starry sky origin chi. Xiang Laozu had used the Cauldron of Good Fortune to absorb all the starry sky origin chi binding the blood-changing god needle, but Peng Daoren had condensed a large amount of starry sky origin qi. The 7 great source attributes were poured into his body, which was used to condense the 7 great source abilities. A total of 49 source abilities were enough to restore Peng Daoren's strength to the 7th true spirit realm in one fell swoop. With Xiang Laozu's strength, the source energy absorbed by the cauldron of good fortune was just a drop in the ocean. Moreover, it could only absorb the 5 elemental sources, so it didn't have much effect on Peng Daoren's recovery. Longhuai Ancestor first blew away a part of the starry sky origin qi that Peng Daoren had gathered, and then messed up a part of it. This was much easier and more effective than Xiang Laozu directly absorbing the source energy. Just looking at the furious expression on Peng Daoren's face after Longhuai Ancestor made his move, it could be seen. However, after old ancestor Xiang used the Cauldron of Creation to seize Taoist Peng's origin qi, he was able to directly use the heaven-splitting artifact for his own use. Even though it was fleeting, it was still a process of one's loss and the other's gain. In comparison, old ancestor Long Huai's ability was inferior. Right now, the two of them were trying their best to stop Peng Daoren from pouring the source energy into his body. Because once Peng Daoren recovered to the 7th true spirit realm, they would not be able to fight back against Peng Daoren. However, although Peng Daoren was in a rush to recover his cultivation and could not make a powerful counterattack, he could still gather and sort out the source energy that Longhuai Ancestor had scattered and messed up. Like this, Xiang Laozu used all his strength to steal, Longhuai Ancestor used all his strength to disturb, and Peng Daoren used all his strength to recover and absorb the source energy into his body to reconstruct the source energy. Like this, they could barely form a stalemate, but Peng Daoren could still use the accumulated energy to reconstruct the source energy. Lu Daoyu, quickly stop him. We can't let this person cultivate all 7 realms at the same time. Lu Ping naturally knew the consequences of Peng Daoren successfully cultivating all 7 realms at the same time. This was because not only Peng Daoren, Lu Ping, Longhuai Ancestor, Xiang Laozu, Butterfly Fairy, and the others were also restricted by this world and had no choice but to take this path. The only difference was that after they reached the peak of the first true spirit realm, it was a matter of how many source energy they could open. However, compared to the other 3, Lu Ping had opened 7 sources because of the Samling 5-element leaf, so he could also cultivate all 7 realms at the same time. Longhuai Ancestor and the others could also open several sources because of their ancestor's legacy, but it was impossible for them to cultivate all 7 realms at the same time like Lu Ping. At least Lu Ping could see from Longhuai Ancestor's life source spirit treasure that he had only opened 6 sources at most. As for Xiang Laozu and the Butterfly Fairy, although Lu Ping did not know the details of them, he did not think that they would have opened more sources than Longhuai Ancestor. If he walked a gradual path, he would encounter a huge bottleneck when he reached the 8th true spirit realm from the peak of the 7th realm. If he cultivated several sources at the same time, it would greatly reduce the difficulty of reaching the 8th true spirit realm, but he would have to stay in the first true spirit realm before he reached the peak of the 7th realm. Both methods had their advantages and disadvantages. However, Peng Daoren had already reached the 7th true spirit realm when he split open the sky. Although he had been imprisoned for 30,000 years, how could 30,000 years of planning be just to recover his original strength? Lu Ping had a serious expression and a rainbow-colored feather fan had appeared in his hand at some point. The feather fan grew in Lu Ping's hand, reaching 7 feet and 7 inches. This divine artifact seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds in Lu Ping's hand as it slowly fanned down. This feather fan looked slow and powerless, but the moment Lu Ping fanned it, it created a hurricane in the void, as if it wanted to shatter the space around it. Wherever the power of the 7 feather fan reached, the starry sky essence qi condensed by Peng Daoren turned into a chaotic flow. The starry sky essence qi that had just condensed once again became chaotic. Compared to the giant fan that the true spirit cultivator had summoned outside the 9 profound tower, the range of Lu Ping's spiritual ability was not wide, but its power had increased by many times. With the combined efforts of Xiang Laozu and Longhuai Ancestor, the 3 of them finally shook the process of Longhuai Ancestor's spiritual ability. The 7 different attributed essence qi rivers were stirred up before they could flow into his body. A large amount of pure essence chi broke free from Peng Doran's control and dissipated into the void. The amount of origin chi Peng Doran controlled became less and less, finally affecting the condensation of the 7 spiritual abilities. Chapter 1573. Damn it! Although Peng Doran had gathered more than enough starry sky essence chi to condense the 49 spirit techniques needed for the 7 realms cultivation, it could not withstand the attacks of Xiang Laozu, Longhuai Ancestor, and Lu Ping. At this time, most of Peng Doran's energy was focused on condensing the new spirit techniques for his corporeal body. As such, he could not fully block the harassment from Lu Ping and the others. However, this did not mean that he did not have the power to fight back. A black mist mixed with a fierce and sinister aura gushed out from behind Peng Doran, and then stretched out its tentacles towards Lu Ping and the others like an octopus. It was the life-spirit baleful aura that Peng Doran had used to condense the starry sky essence chi into his corporeal body. This kind of heaven and earth baleful aura condensed from the death of a world's living beings could easily invade a cultivator's mind, pollute a cultivator's true essence, and corrupt a cultivator's corporeal body and spiritual treasures. It was the most insidious and difficult to deal with. According to legend, at the beginning of the world, the heaven and earth baleful aura was extremely turbid, and the path of cultivation was extremely difficult. The 7th Patriarch used his great power to eliminate and dissolve these heaven and earth baleful aura. However, the birth and death of the heaven and earth baleful aura was a supreme principle. Although the 7th Patriarch could resolve it with his great spiritual power, he could not resolve it for a lifetime. Therefore, the 7th Patriarch set up the origin net in the North Ice Field. In addition to using it to protect this world, the other purpose was to resolve the baleful aura after the death of the world's living beings, allowing the world to become clear and bright, allowing the wind of cultivation to flourish. According to legend, after this baleful aura was completely filtered by the origin net, it would completely vanish. Who would have thought that Taoist Peng would actually be using it in secret? Now, he was even using it to reconstruct his body. It could be imagined that once Peng Doran condensed his divine power and recovered his cultivation base, coupled with the body that he had been planning for tens of thousands of years by using the evil spirits of this world collected by Mara's calamity, his strength would grow to an unimaginable level. Xiang Laozu didn't even think about it. He threw a beam of spiritual light toward the spiritual aura that was rushing toward him. The spiritual light expanded into a 1,000-pound staff in the air. It was the spiritual treasure left behind by Wise Ape after his death. Afterward, he didn't know what kind of exchange he had made with Longhuai Ancestor and Lu Ping, but this acquired spiritual treasure, which was not inferior to a heaven-splitting divine artifact, had fallen into his hands. Although this baleful aura was known as the world's most baleful aura, it also depended on whether it was sufficient. After all, the 1,000-pound staff was Taoist Ape's favorite weapon in the past and was a proper acquired spiritual treasure. Before the baleful aura could corrode the 1,000-pound staff, it had already been smashed into nothingness by this divine weapon. Xiang Laozu used 2 acquired spiritual treasures that were similar to heaven-splitting divine artifacts at the same time. Even though he had summoned the tyrannical turtle's real spirit body, his face was flushed. It was obvious that the burden was not light. Longhuai Ancestor turned the natal spiritual treasure in his hand into a towering tree. Similarly, a pitch-black barrier was formed along with the towering tree. The moment the baleful aura that was rushing toward him came into contact with it, the 2 sides began to fight for it. The barrier that Longhuai Ancestor put up was not as strange as the baleful aura, but it was better than the baleful aura in that it could continuously support this barrier with the source of its divine power. The firmament of myriad poisons? Taoist Peng glanced at Ancestor Longhuai, and then he glanced at Ancestor Xiang, who was at the other side. He was unable to restrain the ridicule in his heart any longer, and he let out a string of strange laughter that caused everyone to be flustered in their hearts. If that tortoise hadn't turned on me back then, I would have had to spend a lot more effort to deal with the 4-legged serpent. In fact, it wouldn't have been easy for me to protect my true spirit. I never imagined that the descendant of the four-legged serpent would use the same method as that tortoise. How laughable. Humph, humph. Two cold snorts rang out at the same time. Xiang Laozu and Longhuai ancestor looked straight ahead, as if they had turned a deaf ear to Peng Doran's provocative eyes. They only focused on restraining the two baleful auras, then attacked Peng Doran even more fiercely. For a moment, the source of baleful aura became even more chaotic, and Peng Doran found it even more difficult to recondense his divine power. What do the grudges of our ancestors have to do with us? We only want to live. If Peng Laozu could open the passage to this world and let us seek the path of immortality, why would we have to risk our lives? But now, our lives are hanging by a thread. Even if the cultivator with the Jiao bloodline uses Taoist Gui's divine power, and the cultivator with the Peng bloodline practices Jiao Doran's heaven-splitting swordsmanship, it's only for the sake of survival. The blood transformation divine needle was evil to begin with. As Butterfly Fairy spoke with confidence and composure, she treated the living baleful aura as if it were nothing. She controlled the blood transformation divine needle to pass through it, taking advantage of Daoist Peng's flustered state to launch another sneak attack. This time, it was aimed at Daoist Peng's eyes. Peng Doran snorted coldly and said, "Childish." Naturally, he did not take the Butterfly Fairy's methods seriously. Although his body could not move because he was condensing his divine power, he suddenly blew out a puff of pure vital essence. This vital essence circled in front of him and turned into a golden Peng bird. With a spread of its wings, it streaked across the void like an arrow released from a bow. Then, the Peng bird stretched out its neck and pecked at the blood-dissipating needles. Unexpectedly, this time, the Butterfly Fairy had learned her lesson from last time. Her needle was just a feint. A cloud of blood mist exploded, and the Peng bird pecked empty air. The blood-dissipating needles had already appeared in the void above Peng Doran's head, which had been combed into a distinct river of origin. Like an embroidery needle picking up the colorful threads on a piece of embroidery, the blood-melting divine needle kept appearing and disappearing, once again picking up the original energy that Daoist Peng had managed to clear with great difficulty and turning it into a mess. Peng Doran roared again and again, but there was nothing he could do at the moment. He could only try his best to absorb the remaining primordial qi into his body and try his best to condense another divine power so that he could recover some of his cultivation base and strength. At this moment, Peng Doran made a sound of surprise. When he turned to look, it turned out that there was a purple gold shield in front of Lu Ping. No matter how the life aura-killing needles raged, it could not do anything to the shield. Although Xiang Laozu and the Longhuai ancestor had blocked the life aura-killing needles, they had relied on a large amount of their true essence to do so. As for the Butterfly Fairy, although her blood-dissipating needles did not fear the corrosion of the life aura-killing needles, she had extraordinary attainments in spatial divine power. When she flew, she was like a butterfly flitting through flowers, and the life aura-killing needles could not lock her down in a short period of time. Yet, Lu Ping was able to calmly block the most ferocious thing in this world with just an ordinary divine power. How could this not amaze Peng Doran? If there is anything in this world that can compete with the life aura-killing needles, it has to be the 10,000 poison source liquid. Peng Doran sighed and said, "I never thought that the essence of the poison pill that bastard used to plot against the four-legged snake would fall into your hands. I was originally amazed at how a human cultivator like you could reach where you are today. I thought that you should be a trump card that the four-legged snake left behind, right? But I never thought that the four-legged snake would have the courage to leave a trump card on a human cultivator." The name of the 10,000 poison source liquid had become famous in the cultivation world because of a case at the beginning of the world, not to mention the Longhuai ancestor and Xiang Laozu. Even the Butterfly Fairy couldn't help looking deeply at Lu Ping in surprise. Ever since they entered the passage array, Lu Ping's strength had been revealed step by step. He was also in the peak of the first true spirit realm. Although he had surprised the Longhuai ancestor and the others time and again, the Longhuai ancestor and the others had always looked down on Lu Ping. This had nothing to do with Lu Ping's shallow cultivation time, but because of his bloodline inheritance. The human bloodline was the most heterogeneous. At the beginning of cultivation, other than the 7 main attributes, there were 7 different bloodlines. This created 49 possible cultivation paths, but a person's potential was limited. The more possible choices there were, the thinner a person's potential would be. As a result, it was very difficult for a human cultivator to purify their main bloodline. Not to mention compared to the monster race, especially the high-grade monster race with the bloodline of the 7th patriarch, humans didn't have any inherited memories, so they didn't have much of the 7th patriarch's inheritance. Although cultivators cultivated fast, compared to the monster race, cultivators of the same level were generally weaker. They could only rely on numbers to make up for the balance between the two races. This was also why Peng Daoren believed that even if the other Laozu had a trump card, they wouldn't choose a human cultivator. Now that Peng Daoren had confirmed that Lu Ping was the same as the Longhuai ancestor and Xiang Laozu, the same person the 7th patriarch had chosen after 10,000 years of planning, everyone suddenly realized that they had underestimated this famous human cultivator in the cultivation world. Chapter 1574. Doesn't Laozu also have the Yuan family that has harmed the cultivation world for tens of thousands of years without anyone knowing? Lu Ping's response was neither servile nor overbearing. At a time like this, he couldn't back down. Otherwise, it would only make others think that he was a coward. Not to mention, in this life and death situation, he might even be abandoned by his allies at any time. At the very least, they had the heaven-opening divine weapons that originally belonged to someone else. Who could confidently say that there wasn't anything fishy about them? Since Lu Daoyu has a way to block the life aura fiend, I ask fellow cultivator to lend us a hand and let us stop this person from absorbing the source essence. Xiang Laozu used 2 heaven-opening divine weapons to deal with Peng Daoren at the same time, which consumed a lot of energy. Seeing that Lu Ping had used the 10,000 poison source liquid to protect himself, he could only suppress the envy and strange thoughts in his heart as he quickly begged Lu Ping. Lu Ping also understood that with 7 realms at the same time, even if he condensed 8 source abilities for each attribute, Peng Daoren's cultivation would still be in the first true spirit realm. But even if they destroyed the 5 source essences Peng Daoren had condensed 2 of his source abilities to perfection. Perhaps this was an unbearable failure for Peng Daoren, but for Lu Ping and the others, facing an opponent in the second true spirit realm was also a disaster. At this time, Lu Ping had the best method to restrain Peng Daoren's life aura fiend. It was indeed the best time to cover the other 3's attacks. Lu Ping naturally could not shirk this responsibility at this time, but after Xiang Laozu finished speaking, he noticed something from the expectant gazes of the Longhuai ancestor and the butterfly fairy. That's fine. Everyone can be assured. Lu Ping's heart slightly moved, but he revealed an indifferent smile on his face as he spoke. How could he not know that although Xiang Laozu's words were true, the 3 of them were planning to obtain the 10,000 poison source liquid from him? Lu Ping had been cultivating, and it was unknown how many benefits he had obtained from the 10,000 poison source liquid. No one knew the value of the 10,000 poison source liquid better than Lu Ping. Once Lu Ping lent a portion of the 10,000 poison source liquid to the 3 of them, they naturally would not be polite. There was a high chance they would not return it, and even if they returned it, they would consume a lot of it. However, Lu Ping did not care at all. He threw out both his hands, and dozens of rays of light fell 10 meters away from him. They were dozens of different kinds of formation tools, and each of them was forged with high-quality spiritual materials. If it was in the hands of any formation master, a single formation tool could be used as the core formation plate of a formation. However, these dozens of formation tools in front of him were just the scraps of a formation. Just when the other 3 were confused, a 9th-grade white jade lotus flower unknowingly materialized under Lu Ping's feet and slowly bloomed. It was the lotus formation diagram of Lu Ping's natal gentian formation. In the instant that the formation diagram opened, the densely packed runes on the petals swam like tadpoles, and the formation lines changed accordingly. In an instant, a formation plate that was quite similar to the natal gentian formation diagram was formed. It resonated with the dozens of formation tools, and a small-scale formation was formed in Lu Ping's hands. The natal gentian formation originated from the soaring dragon galaxy technique. Similar to the 9 foundation formations that Lu Ping had obtained from Dark Sky Island, they were all the inheritances left behind by Jiao Daoren. The two had something in common. Although Lu Ping did not specialize in formations, there were 2 formation masters in the Jinling sect, and they had studied Jiao Daoren's formation inheritance very deeply. Daoist Jiao's 9 foundation formations had countless variations, and Deng Tianming was a formation genius that only appeared once in 1,000 years. Even after hundreds of years, he had only mastered 3 foundation formations. Heavenly Fox, on the other hand, paled in comparison. However, he had also mastered 2 foundational formations. However, he had only managed to comprehend one of them with Deng Tianming's help. Even so, Heavenly Fox could be considered one of the few formation masters in the world of cultivation. It was also because of these 2 that before Lu Ping left, the Jinling sect had already replaced Dark Sky Island as the formation master in the cultivation world. This simple and fast method of setting up a formation was the method that Lu Ping had asked Deng Tianming and Skyfox to prepare for him to break through the passageway formation. In order to break through the passageway formation, Lu Ping had prepared for 500 years. He did not just spend those 500 years on cultivation. He had also done his best to predict and prepare for all kinds of unexpected situations. The moment the formation took shape, Lu Ping extended his left index finger and tapped the lotus formation beneath his feet. A drop of purplish gold liquid the size of a grape condensed on his fingertip, which then dripped onto the stamen in the middle of the formation. A purplish gold layer of light then spread along the lotus formation to the surrounding formation tools. The light slowly rose and first enveloped Lu Ping's entire body. Next, Lu Ping blew at the light screen in front of him. The purplish gold light screen suddenly bulged outwards, and a purplish gold bubble gradually formed. It then separated from the light screen that enveloped Lu Ping and flew towards Xiang Laozu, who was the furthest away from Lu Ping. Xiang Laozu frowned slightly when he saw the bubble flying towards him. However, he did not dodge in the end. The bubble swallowed Xiang Laozu the instant it hit him. Coincidentally, the baleful life form that had been entangled with the 15-ton staff had circled around it. Taking advantage of Xiang Laozu's moment of hesitation, it crashed into the purplish gold bubble. With a crisp pop, the purplish gold bubble violently trembled, but in the end, it still blocked the baleful life form outside the bubble. Xiang Laozu's expression relaxed, but there was also a trace of regret mixed in. However, he still stretched out his hand and swiped at the top of his head. The cauldron of creation that was floating above him shifted, and the mouth of the cauldron aimed in Lu Ping's direction. As the body of the cauldron tilted, a 5-colored stream of light fell into the void. Xiang Laozu said in a loud voice, "Thank you, Lu Daoyu." Lu Ping nodded slightly, taking Xiang Laozu's words of thanks with equanimity. Afterwards, he saw the void in front of him tremble, and a 5-colored stream of light suddenly appeared in front of him. Lu Ping did not dodge and allowed the 5-colored light to pour over him. Soon after, it disappeared into his skin. Lu Ping raised his eyebrows slightly, and a sliver of surprise appeared on his face. This 5-colored energy was twice as much as the benefits that Xiang Laozu had promised him for the Longhuai ancestor in order to obtain the 15-ton staff. However, Lu Ping immediately realized that this should be Xiang Laozu's way of thanking him for blocking the baleful life form. As a result, he no longer acted pretentiously. He blew out 3 more mouthfuls of energy, and 3 purplish gold bubbles left the light screen one after another. They flew towards the Longhuai ancestor and the butterfly fairy, who were currently entangled with the baleful life form. As for the remaining one, Lu Ping protected the heavily injured and dying Xiao Baiyu, who was far away from the battle. Lu Ping didn't directly lend the myriad poison source potion to the 3 of them. Instead, he first laid out the potion in the form of an array formation. This time, he was going to borrow the array formation created by Jinling sect's other array formation grandmaster, Enlightened Master Xin Chun. With the array formation would be used on Ancestor Xiang and the others. This way, Lu Ping would be in control of the array formation, and the others wouldn't be able to steal the potion from the array formation. With the assistance of Lu Ping's ability, Xiang Laozu and the others no longer had anything to worry about. As they unleashed their abilities, Peng Doran's control over the remaining source liquids became weaker and weaker. His sorting through the source liquids of the 7 elements gradually could not keep up with their destruction. However, the closer it was to this possibility, Xiang Laozu and the others became even more cautious, even to the point of being nervous. This was because once Peng Daoran gave up his tens of thousands of years of planning and gave up on cultivating the 7 realms, it would be hard for them to interfere. Once Peng Daoran raised his cultivation to the 2nd or 3rd true spirit realm, it would be hard for them to escape. However, facing this possibility, the Longhuai ancestor and Lu Ping were very calm. Although Lu Ping did not know why the Longhuai ancestor was this calm, Lu Ping himself was not panicked. This was because he believed that Peng Daoran would not give up on his tens of thousands of years of planning. Lu Ping had always believed that Peng Doran's plans from opening the heavens to now was not just to recover his original cultivation. This was because from the Soaring Dragon Galaxy secret art Lu Ping had obtained, in the boundless starry sky, above the 7 realms, there were 8 realms, and it was even impossible to have 9 realms. Peng Daoran was already a cultivator in the 7th true spirit realm when the heavens were opened and the divine weapon he held was condensed from the thunder source. In other words, he already had the cultivation to attack the 8th true spirit realm's thunder source when the heavens were opened. With Peng Doran's pride, how could he place a small 7-realm cultivator in his eyes? At this time, the Longhuai ancestor suddenly said in a deep voice, "Everyone, don't worry. Peng Daoran has condensed his body with the life aura fiend, so if he doesn't cultivate all 7 realms to perfection in one go, cultivators under the 7th true spirit realm will not be able to resist the backlash from the life aura fiend." So it was like this. Lu Ping suddenly understood. This time, even if Peng Daoran wanted to abandon the rook to protect the general, he couldn't do it. But what can you do? As soon as the Longhuai ancestor finished speaking, Peng Doran's gloomy voice rang out and everyone's hearts sank. Chapter 1575. Lu Ping knew where Longhuai ancestors' confidence came from. Unlike normal cultivators who cultivated the 7 realms at the same time, Peng Daoran had reconstructed his corporeal body, so he cultivated the 7 realms at the same time. That is to say, he cultivated the 7 elemental origins at the same time and reconstructed his origin spirit technique at the same time. Usually, if a cultivator wanted to cultivate more than one elemental energy at the same time, they would first have to reach the peak of the 1st level of the true spirit realm before they could activate the other elemental energies. In other words, although Lu Ping had activated all 7 elemental energies at the same time, he had already cultivated the water elemental energy to the peak of the 1st level of the true spirit realm. Thus, he was actually cultivating all 6 elemental energies at the same time. The reason why Taoist Peng was able to abandon his life source energy and walk the path of simultaneously cultivating all 7 realms was firstly to buy time, and secondly because he had sufficient confidence in his control over his body after starting anew. However, Peng Daoran never thought that Longhuai ancestor and the others would appear in this world. Or rather, even if he thought that the other heaven-opening Laozu might have left behind some tricks, it was impossible for 4 true spirit realm cultivators to appear at the same time. It was even more impossible for 18 true spirit cultivators to gather together at the same time, causing the layers of obstacles he laid down to be broken one after another. Even now, when he tried to reconstruct his corporeal body, he still suffered an unprecedented obstruction. The starry sky essence chi he gathered was constantly plundered by the good fortune cauldron, disturbed by the 1,000-ton stick, disturbed by the heaven and earth wine cauldron, stirred by the blood-transforming god needle, and then blown away by the 7-feather fan. The starry sky essence chi he could control was constantly being lost. Even if he wanted to cultivate the 7 realms to perfection in one fell swoop, it would be difficult for him to do so. A few abominable juniors, daring to ruin this senior's plans. If this senior's corporeal body was not condensed from life essence chi, then even if this senior's 10,000 years of planning was destroyed, he would first cultivate 2 or 3 origins to perfection and then kill them one by one. You juniors only want to stop me from cultivating all 7 realms and reaching perfection. But what can you do? I've been planning since the beginning of my plan. How can you juniors succeed just because you want to destroy it? Pang Doran's words were filled with contempt for Longhua ancestor and the others. Amidst the increasingly dazzling 7 essential essences, a ball of golden light appeared from nothing and became more and more dazzling, until there was another Yuanqi river in the Yuanqi flow formed by the 7 essential essences. Golden light danced and lightning flashed. The moment this origin Qi river was formed, the other 7 origin Qi rivers instantly lost their luster. This was the essence of thunder. The 4 people's expressions immediately changed. Taoist Peng was unable to cultivate all 7 origins at the same time, so he directly activated the thunder origin for his body. What was he going to do? Cultivate all 8 realms at once? Although Lu Ping had expected this, he did not think that Peng Daoren would be so resolute. Although there was only one more source of thunder in the 8 realms and the 7 realms at the same time, the difficulty was many times higher. Peng Daoren was restrained by everyone when he was cultivating the 7 realms at the same time. It would be even more difficult to cultivate the 8 realms at the same time. Could he succeed? However, Lu Ping immediately understood why Peng Daoren had taken the risk to activate the lightning origin spirit art. The thunder river traversed the void, and the blood-melting needle was the first to be restrained by the lightning. The cauldron of creation and the wine cauldron of heaven and earth could interfere with the 7 realms, but they could not do anything to the lightning origin spirit art. Only the 15-ton cudgel was still trying to chase, but the thunder river twisted and turned. Wherever the lightning passed, the 15-ton cudgel was like a headless fly, unable to catch up. A bolt of lightning shot out from the thunder river, drawing a thunderbolt in the void, and hit Peng Doran's body. Peng Doran's body was instantly submerged by the lightning, and then the lightning did not gradually dissipate. Instead, it shrank inward and slowly penetrated into his body. Behind Peng Daoren, a dark feather on the tail feather of the Ping's true spirit suddenly shone brightly. Traces of lightning wandered like electric snakes. Impressively, Peng Daoren had already begun the condensation of the first lightning origin spirit art. The lightning origin spirit was obviously an existence that the several heaven-opening artifacts could not touch or interfere with. Even for these heaven-opening artifacts, because of the cultivation of the heaven-opening artifact Laozu, the lightning origin spirit art could even restrain their power to a great extent. However, cultivating 8 realms at the same time was not a trivial matter. At this time, Peng Doran's control over the other 7 realms' essence spirits was no longer as strong as he wished. He even restrained the baleful spirit art's counterattack. Lu Ping took the opportunity to remove the mother and child traction formation and withdraw the myriad meteorite vital poison gang to protect the other 3. Stop him! Xiang Laozu turned into his true spirit art, and a giant tortoise the size of a mountain slammed into the source energy river. The good fortune cauldron was still above the giant tortoise's head, swallowing the endless source energy. It was unknown if he really had a way to stop Peng Daoren from condensing the lightning origin spirit art, or if he wanted to take this chance to absorb the scattered source energy into the good fortune cauldron for his own use, or maybe it was both. Longhua ancestor looked dignified. The treasure cauldron of heaven and earth in his hand was said to be able to mobilize all the pneuma in the world. It could be said that the treasure cauldron of heaven and earth contributed the most to the disturbance of Peng Daoren condensing the 7 great origin spirit art. But in fact, this heaven-opening artifact had no effect on the lightning origin, because among the 7 Laozu who opened up this world, none of them comprehended the lightning origin and raised their cultivation to the true spirit realm 8. However, Longhua ancestor's next action deepened Lu Ping's fear of these people. A small crystal hammer appeared in his hand. It was the most precious treasure of the Crystal Palace, the heaven-opening artifact of Taoist Hu, which should have been in the hands of primordial wine Laozu. Longhua ancestor threw the crystal hammer, and the heaven-opening artifact suddenly expanded in the air, smashing straight at Peng Doran's head. Coincidentally, another bolt of lightning from the converging golden thunder river struck at Peng Doran's body. The crystal hammer directly hit this bolt of lightning, and countless electric snakes were thrown in all directions. But in the end, this bolt of lightning still retained half of its power and fell on Longhua Ancestor's body. This weakened lightning origin was obviously not enough to build a lightning origin spirit art. Peng Doran's eyes were about to spit fire as he waited for the crystal hammer to bounce back into the air. But in the end, there was nothing he could do. However, although Longhua Ancestor's attack was effective, the backlash of the lightning origin soon followed. Longhua Ancestor took a deep breath, and the natal spiritual tree in his hand brushed out dozens of spiritual lights in an attempt to protect himself. But the power of the lightning origin was obviously much stronger than the 7 elemental origins. Although Longhua Ancestor tried his best to protect himself, Lu Ping could still see the trembling hands under Longhua Ancestor's sleeves and the lightning flashing on his skin. But these two people were far less shocking to Lu Ping than the butterfly fairy's next move. Just as Longhua Ancestor was suffering from the backlash of the lightning origin, the butterfly fairy suddenly raised a pitch-black oval shield in the air. The shield seemed to weigh thousands of pounds, and even the butterfly fairy had to use both hands to lift it above her head. Then, under Lu Ping's shocked gaze, the butterfly fairy plunged headfirst into the raging lightning source in the void. This is a tortoiseshell? Countless golden lightning snakes smashed towards butterfly fairy like a waterfall, but they were blocked by the shield above her head. At the same time, the tortoiseshell released a grayish-black light screen to block butterfly fairy from the attack. If Xiang Laozu was just wandering around to harass Peng Daoran, and the butterfly fairy was only disturbing the thunder source with the help of Taoist Gui's true spirit shield, Longhua Ancestor had now become the one who directly prevented Peng Daoran from condensing the power of the thunder source. However, after the first time, when Peng Daoran was unprepared, the crystal hammer in his hand destroyed half of the thunder source in one of Peng Daoran's thunderbolts. Its resistance to the thunder source became weaker and weaker. Every time it blocked the thunderbolts, the backlash of the thunderbolts would cause great damage to Longhua Ancestor's physical body. Although Longhua Ancestor tried his best to stop the thunderbolts, the rest of the thunder source was absorbed into Peng Doran's body by Peng Daoran. Among the tail feathers of the rock behind him, 5 were already stained with the thunderbolts. I originally wanted to condense the power of the thunder source after the 7 original powers were fully condensed. In this way, I could use the power of the original power of this world to fuse with the 8 original powers to break through to the 9th level of the true spirit realm. Then, with the innate original power of this world, I could break through to the supreme divine spirit realm and finally enjoy immortality. However, I didn't expect that you minor repairs would be able to force me into such a situation. I had no choice but to condense the power of the thunder source first. You should be proud of yourselves. However, everything ends here. You may have some methods to resist the 7 original powers, but only I had some understanding of the power of the thunder source back then. Only then did I create the number 1 divine artifact, the 7 Thunder Treasures Calabash. Since the world was opened, the old man has used the 7 Thunder Treasures Calabash to collect and nurture the thunder source of this world. If the acquired treasures in your hands were still there, you might have been able to resist it. But now, they are in the hands of you minor repairs. Hee, it's like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. I just need to spend another 1,000 years to break through to the chaotic realm again. As long as the innate original power of this world is still in my hands, the path to immortality will not be able to escape my hands. Peng Daoran saw that the Longhua Ancestor and the others had little effect on resisting the power of the thunder source, while his own power of lightning was not greatly affected. The success of his tens of thousands of years of planning was right in front of him. He could not help but feel happy, and his expression became much more relaxed. At this moment, Lu Ping's heart was in turmoil. The 7th patriarch had disappeared from this world when the world was opened. Now, it seemed that the two sides had clearly started a fight in the passage formation. The result of this fight was obvious. The other 6 Laozu had all died, and even their bodies were refined into puppets. As the strongest and the only survivor, Peng Daoren had no choice but to leave his body and entrust his true soul to the origin of this world. The cultivation world had long speculated that the disappearance of the seventh patriarch was due to the death of all the other Laozu. However, there were different speculations about the reason for the fight. Only Lu Ping knew that the seventh patriarch's fight was because they were fighting for an innate item from a handkerchief that Zhao Daoren left for the Wan Daoist. Now that he suddenly heard innate original power from Peng Daoren, Lu Ping instantly guessed that it must be the item that Zhao Daoren mentioned. Even so, when Lu Ping learned that the innate original power was the key to embark on the path to immortality, he still could not suppress the shock in his heart. The divine spirit realm, the path to immortality, was the innate original power the key? Although everyone was in danger at this moment, and there was always the danger of dying under the ravaging of the origin of thunder, Lu Ping had never felt that the path to immortality was so clearly displayed in front of him. Although it was still far away, and even somewhat unreachable, it made Lu Ping feel that it was indeed real. Did Laozu collect the origin of thunder in this world with the seven treasures Thunder Calabash through the hands of the Yuan clan? Lu Ping's abrupt question was clearly out of Peng Daoren's expectations. This human cultivator's calmness made Peng Daoren feel a little uneasy. However, it was only a little, and it was immediately extinguished by the surging origin of thunder that surged into his body. The Yuan clan? Hee, you're nothing but a marionette of mine. Those few people were able to arrange a contingency plan before they died, trying to use you, minor repairs, to ruin my plan. Don't tell me that I haven't made arrangements for the whole world? While talking and laughing, Peng Daoren strengthened the counterattack with a bolt of original thunder. Longhuai Ancestor gave a muffled groan, and the cosmos wine cauldron floating above his head made a loud noise, mixed with the shrill cry of an ape, and the body of a spirit ape was slowly dissipating. Xiang Laozu was still trying his best to interfere, but the effect was minimal. Meanwhile, the butterfly fairy could no longer withstand the raging thunder. More and more cracks appeared on Priest Gui's armor of true spirit, and those spell symbols that had absorbed the thunder power could no longer be repaired. While controlling the seven-feathered fan to help Laozu, Lu Ping also kept a giant cauldron floating above his head and said, "Poor Yuan clan. For tens of thousands of years, they claimed to be the most powerful family, but in the end, they were just puppets at the mercy of others. What a pity." Taoist Peng sneered and said, "At that time, I had yet to open up the cultivation of the origin of thunder. Otherwise, I would have rewarded them with some good fortune after I succeeded in my cultivation for tens of thousands of years, making up for the deficiencies in their bloodlines. They were nothing more than objects of fortune and ant-like existences. If they died, then they died. What's there to feel pity about?" Taoist Peng sneered and said, "Back then, I had yet to open up the cultivation of the origin of thunder." Chapter 1577. Even a few losers were able to set up a contingency plan to deal with me. Could it be that I've been here for tens of thousands of years for nothing? Peng Daoren couldn't help but mock coldly when he saw that the few people in front of him were unable to fight back under the backlash of his lightning source. At this time, the human race's minor repairs suddenly opened his mouth and said, "So the lightning source of the seven thunder treasures Calabash in the hands of the Yuan clan is all here." Peng Daoren looked at Lu Ping with a trace of surprise, but he smiled and said, "Not bad. I didn't expect a human race's minor repairs to be able to think of this. The reason I left the Yuan clan behind was to use them to control the Mara clan, which I created, to appear in the cultivation world and provoke the disaster of Mara. Only then can I collect the evil chi of the dead creatures in this world and reconstruct my body." Similarly, the seven thunder treasures Calabash was left in the Yuan clan to collect the lightning source of this world. Unfortunately, the Yuan clan was unable to accomplish anything. If I hadn't acted in time, the lightning source that I spent tens of thousands of years to collect would have almost collapsed. Lu Ping sighed and said, "No wonder the cultivation world says that wherever there is a Yuan clan, there will be a disaster of Mara. It was originally just a joke about the Yuan clan, but it turned out to be a prophecy. Peng Doran's expression suddenly changed and he asked sternly, "Boy, you should have already known about this when you destroyed the Yuan clan. Why are you still asking the old man?" A strange smile suddenly appeared on Lu Ping's face. He laughed and said, "Does Lao Zu know who the person who almost collapsed the lightning source was?" As soon as Lu Ping finished speaking, he felt a cold gaze filled with boundless killing intent land on him. Lu Ping's expression instantly changed. In the blink of an eye, just as Lu Ping was anticipating something bad to happen, a ray of lightning suddenly separated from the source of the lightning. It turned into a bolt of lightning that tore through the void and landed right above Lu Ping's head. A deafening clap of thunder followed after the lightning bolt, but the lightning bolt had already dyed Lu Ping's face a purplish-gold color. This was a lightning bolt formed from the origin lightning bolt. Although it wasn't Taoist Ping's origin technique, its power far surpassed all the origin supreme techniques Lu Ping had seen before. The source of lightning was so profound that its power was actually so explosive. It was no wonder there was a large gap between the 7th true spirit realm and the 8th true spirit realm. The power of the divine ability clearly showed this almost insurmountable gap. Dodge. Old Ancestor Long Huai couldn't help but shout at Lu Ping anxiously. Although they all had their own thoughts, they were facing an unprecedented enemy. Before their common enemy was eliminated, if one of them died prematurely, then their path to immortality would be left with nothing but despair. Old Ancestor Long Huai's voice rang out. Long Huai Ancestor ruthlessly pushed the heaven and earth wine cauldron above his head. He wanted to push the heaven-opening divine weapon towards the lightning source. It had to be known that although the heaven and earth wine cauldron was magical, it had little effect on the lightning source. Ape Taoist was only a cultivator in the 5th true spirit realm after all. However, this cauldron was still a heaven-opening divine weapon. At this time, Long Huai Ancestor did not care about the cauldron's damage and tried to interfere with the lightning source, but he was still able to slightly control it. It was not just Long Huai Ancestor. At this moment, Butterfly Fairy and Xiang Laozu also increased their attacks in an attempt to reduce the pressure on Lu Ping, allowing him to dodge Peng Doran's attack. However, when the origin lightning struck down, the scene that everyone had imagined did not appear. Lu Ping did not even try to dodge. It was as if he had been scared out of his wits, and he still maintained the strange smile on his face. The lightning struck Lu Ping's head, but Lu Ping's entire body was dyed purple gold. The flowing lightning exploded and covered everything. From afar, it looked like Lu Ping had disappeared in the lightning. Sure enough, you've even mastered this thing. While the hearts of Patriarch Long Huai and the others sank to the bottom, Taoist Peng, who was doing his best to gather the essence of lightning divine ability, had even paused the process of gathering his divine ability. Instead, he stared at the depths of the ball of lightning and said slowly with a rare hint of solemnity in his voice. Long Huai Ancestor and the others were stunned. Peng Doran's words were clearly not directed at them. Could it be that Lu Taiping, who had been directly hit by the lightning source, was still alive? Just as everyone turned to look, they saw a figure slowly walking out of the lightning. Who else could it be but Lu Taiping? How was this possible? At this moment, Long Huai Ancestor and the others were definitely not happy, but shocked. It was a kind of hysterical disbelief that was beyond their understanding. The power contained in the thunder origin was not a lightning-attributed divine ability, nor was it a pure young thunder tribulation. It was a power that was much more powerful than the heavenly punishment. So how could Lu Taiping treat it as nothing? The purple gold lightning was shrinking, and Lu Ping's body was gradually revealed in the lightning. Other than that, there was something hanging above Lu Ping's head, attracting everyone's attention. A foot-long purple calabash was hanging 3 feet above Lu Ping's head. At this moment, there were bolts of lightning coming out of the calabash from time to time, causing the calabash to tremble. It was like a child who had eaten too much and was constantly burping. 7 Treasures Thunder Calabash. This was the 7 Treasures Thunder Calabash. Lu Taiping actually had the 7 Treasures Thunder Calabash. Long Huai Ancestor, Butterfly Fairy, and Xiang Laozu almost instantly confirmed the identity of this purple calabash. Only the 7 Treasures Thunder Calabash, and only the Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash could face the lightning source without fear, because the original purpose of refining the Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash was to nurture the lightning source. However, wasn't the Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash destroyed by Longhuai ancestor at the foot of the Shang Mountain? Could it be that the calabash above Lu Taiping's head was refined by him? Everyone, don't let your guard down. Let this person condense a lightning attribute magic power. Originally, Peng Daoren, who had been letting the world's origin power condense into his body, condense the origin magic power, and restore his cultivation, could not move at all. He could only use the natural barrier condensed by the world's origin power, which was far beyond the divine thoughts of Lu Ping and the others, or the tyrannical power of the lightning source itself to stop the joint harassment of others. Even though Daoist Peng had forced himself to attack Lu Ping, he had still forced Daoist Peng to pause the technique he was in the middle of condensing. And if something went wrong with the technique he was in the middle of condensing would be completely useless. At the same time, he would also waste a strand of lightning essence. How could Lu Taiping have the Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash? Chapter 1578. Lu Ping's sudden use of the Seven Treasure Lightning Calabash not only shocked Peng Daoren, but even Longhuai ancestor and the rest did not expect Lu Ping to have such a powerful weapon in his hands. Although this Seven Treasure Lightning Calabash was not the true heaven-opening artifact that Peng Daoren had back then, it was still a genuine Seven Treasure Lightning Calabash. However, the lightning source above Daoist Peng's head had already lost the protection of a true heaven-splitting artifact after the Battle of Mount Shang. Although Daoist Peng had reabsorbed most of it, at the end of the day, the most powerful part of the Seven Treasures Lightning Calabash was the lightning source it nurtured. The calabash itself was only a special quality vessel. However, this vessel had an unparalleled attraction to the lightning source. With the Seven Treasure Lightning Calabash, Lu Ping could completely ignore the backlash of Peng Daoren using the lightning source. Not only that, Lu Ping even began to actively use the lightning calabash to snatch the lightning source. Snatch. He was indeed snatching. Unlike Longhuai ancestors' obstruction, Xiang Laozu's harassment, and Butterfly Fairy's small skirmishes, Lu Ping used the Seven Treasure Lightning Calabash to directly compete with Peng Daoren for the lightning source. Peng Daoren wanted to use the lightning source to reconstruct his body's god art. Every god art required a large amount of lightning source. Although Lu Ping could not control a large amount of lightning source like Peng Daoren, Lu Ping did not need to slow down the absorption of the lightning source like Peng Daoren. The Seven Treasure Lightning Calabash was like a bottomless pit. Although the absorption speed was not fast, it was very balanced and continuously absorbing the lightning source that Peng Daoren had been nurturing for tens of thousands of years. Daoist Peng had been accumulating for 10,000 years, and his thunder origin was more than enough to condense 9 origin divine abilities. Unfortunately, it couldn't withstand the Seven Treasures Thunder Gourd's plundering. It wouldn't be long before he ran out of thunder origin. Peng Daoren revealed a look of panic for the first time. If it was said that Lu Ping and the others working together to disturb Peng Daoren's absorption of the 7 sources only made him angry, but he still regarded them as clowns in his heart, the current Peng Daoren finally revealed a look of panic for the first time. If he still couldn't condense the source of lightning, then all his plans from the time he split open the heavens until now would really be for naught. 8 sources, each source had been opened, but none of them could be condensed to perfection. This meant that Peng Daoren had a powerful body formed from the life aura fiend, but his cultivation was still in the first true spirit realm. This was fine, but the most important thing was that the 8 sources could not be condensed. This meant that Peng Daoren would lose the chance to break into the 9th true spirit realm with the 8 god arts. If he couldn't reach the primal chaos realm, his path to immortality would be cut off. Peng Daoren no longer had the arrogance and scrutiny from before. He gritted his teeth as he stared at Lu Ping, who was calmly absorbing the lightning source with the 7 treasure lightning calabash. His terrifying gaze seemed like it wanted to swallow him up. Unfortunately, Daoist Peng still didn't dare to move his body rashly at this moment. Once his body moved, the divine ability he was condensing would definitely be severed. It was better to seize this opportunity to seize more origins and cultivate one divine ability. Taoist Peng was horrified and shocked. Why did such a thought emerge in his mind? The supreme confidence he had when victory was within his grasp had actually slipped away unknowingly. This group of ants had actually forced him into such a situation. Thinking back to when the 7 of them fought here, he was the only one who survived because he had a higher cultivation. However, he was heavily injured and had no choice but to give up his body when he was on the verge of death. He used his true spirit to fuse with this world's source to live until now. However, it was true that fusing with the source of heaven and earth would allow one's true spirit to be indestructible, but if one were to contend against the source of heaven and earth with the strength of one person, the source of heaven and earth would constantly assimilate one's true spirit and obliterate one's intelligence. In the end, one would become a puppet of the world. Although one ruled over the world, one would lose all emotions and desires. Taoist Peng would no longer be himself. What Taoist Peng had schemed for over 30,000 years was nothing more than to break free from the barrier of this world's quintessence and return to himself. For this, he didn't hesitate to seal off the path to immortality that led outside of this world, hunt down true spirit cultivators, seize their quintessence, create the demon Luo clan, incessantly provoke calamities, gather baleful spirits in the midst of death, reconstruct his physical body, and accumulate the quintessence of heaven and earth. Now that everything was about to be completed, he never thought that it would be destroyed by a human cultivator at the last moment. This was definitely not possible. This sovereign could move unhindered across the world in order to live a free and unfettered life. If the path to immortality was cut off, what was the point of living for thousands of years? Taoist Peng stared fixedly at the 7 treasures lightning calabash above Lu Ping's head, his eyes flashing with hope and greed. If he could seize the calabash in one fell swoop, he would at least be able to delay the condensation of the thunder element's energy. Then, he might still have a chance of achieving immortality. Peng Daoren suddenly shouted, and the lightning source that had condensed into a ball in the air suddenly surged like boiling water. A ball of golden lightning water suddenly exploded in the void, directly breaking through the void and pouring down on Lu Ping's body. This bolt of lightning directly consumed a third of the remaining lightning source, which was the limit that Peng Daoren could control at this moment. He wanted to use this lightning source to break through the limit that Lu Ping could control and break Lu Ping's control over the 7 treasures lightning gourd. It would be best if he could take this opportunity to snatch this lightning gourd. The surging lightning river made Lu Ping feel great fear for a moment. He had no choice but to loudly shout, "Fellow cultivators, help me!" With that, a pure young giant cauldron rose up and floated under the 7 treasures lightning gourd. Longhuai Ancestor immediately saw through Peng Daoren's plan and took the initiative to help, saying, "Protect the lightning gourd. No matter what individual means, only the 7 treasures lightning gourd could resist the lightning source. Otherwise, in front of the lightning source, others could only wait helplessly for death." The lightning river fell down, and the 7 treasures lightning gourd was instantly submerged. However, the lightning river suddenly shrank, and the lightning gourd absorbed a third of this lightning river. Although this lightning river exceeded the current limit that the 7 treasures lightning gourd could absorb, it could not burst it. Peng Daoren would not destroy his last hope. His original goal was to control Lu Ping's 7 treasures lightning gourd. A gigantic hammer smashed down from the sky. At that moment, the surface of the crystal hammer was riddled with bumps and hollows. There were traces of it being corroded by the origin of lightning. It did not look like a heaven-opening god artifact at all. Instead, it looked more like a broken lump of iron. However, the more that was the case, the more it gave off a powerful and oppressive aura. Perhaps, this was the original appearance of this heaven-opening god artifact. Gulp. A muffled sound came, like the giant hammer splashing a big bubble in the lightning river. It even brought up a ripple, and the lightning river shrank by a third again. The crystal hammer passed through the river, and there was still a strong lightning left on the body of the divine weapon. With a crisp crackling sound, a mottled crystal the size of a fist fell off the giant hammer, making the divine weapon look even more broken. Ah! A scream suddenly came from the pure yang giant cauldron floating above Lu Ping's head. The lightning river pierced straight into the cauldron, instantly piercing through it. A pure yang spirit treasure was broken, and the remaining one-third of the lightning river was inevitably blocked. However, by now, he had used most of the power he had accumulated to kill Lu Ping and snatch the seven treasures Thunder Calabash. Facing this attack from the Butterfly Fairy, he was somewhat powerless, unless, seeing the fragments penetrate into different parts of the original power of Thunder, the Butterfly Fairy's face lit up with joy. "Break!" she cried. "Not good." Peng Doran's expression changed instantly. Just as he was about to do something else, he saw the 9 pieces of tortoiseshell embedded in the original power of Thunder suddenly explode. This time, the 9 pieces of tortoiseshell completely turned into powder. Immediately, the last layer of the original power of Thunder protecting Peng Doran's body exploded into pieces. The area within a radius of tens of feet was filled with golden snakes of lightning. Xiang Laozu and the Butterfly Fairy clearly had a tacit understanding. In a split second, Xiang Laozu had already abandoned the 1,000-pound staff that had been damaged by the original power of Thunder. Just as the original power of Thunder was destroyed by the Butterfly Fairy, the cauldron of creation suddenly tilted and a colorful thick liquid poured down from the mouth of the cauldron. The thick liquid flowed in all directions and continued to dilute. However, with Peng Doran's body as the center, it formed a colorful ring of light that continuously spread in all directions. Wherever the colorful ring of light passed, the exploded original power of Thunder was pushed outwards. The area around Peng Doran was empty. There was no longer anything to protect him. At the same time, the blood light of the blood-dissipating needle no longer needed to cover its tracks. It did not even care about the blood mist around it being dissipated by the lightning. It just rushed towards Peng Doran's heart. Just as Xiang Laozu and the Butterfly Fairy cooperated tacitly and attacked Peng Doran at the same time, Lu Ping had also reached the moment of life and death. Although the original power of Thunder was jointly eliminated by Lu Ping and the Longhuai ancestor by 2/3, the remaining lightning still directly obliterated the spirit of the Linglong wine cauldron. It even turned this pure young spiritual treasure into a pool of molten iron that spilled everywhere. Although the original power of Thunder was slightly blocked by the Linglong wine cauldron, it still continued to fall on top of Lu Ping's head. However, this moment was enough for Lu Ping to respond. Amidst the rising purple gas, a long, distant roar that seemed to bring with it the vicissitudes of life came. The purple gas tumbled, as if an ancient existence was winding its way through the void. Occasionally, it would reveal some scales and claws. Even the steaming purple gas could not hide its golden light. As the river of Thunder poured in, the purple chi did not wither but swelled even more. Vaguely, there was the sound of waves surging in the purple chi, like the fog that filled the eastern sky when the tide surged. Suddenly, there seemed to be a pearl that shone with a blazing light like the rising sun. Even the thick purple chi could not cover it, and there seemed to be a huge body circling around the pearl. The roars came again and again, and the sound of the waves rolled. The purple chi became more and more violent. Lightning climbed on the purple chi, like a purple cloud with a golden edge. It also seemed like a golden net was woven in the sky, trying to trap something inside. Ancestor Long Huai shot over like a bolt of lightning, and he saw the violet energy rising and stretching for almost 3 kilometers. However, his divine sense was forcefully obstructed by the violet energy, and he was utterly unable to find out the truth behind it. Longhuai ancestor wanted to rush into the purple chi several times to help, and he wanted to see what kind of power Lu Ping was hiding inside. But the fruitless probing of his divine thoughts gave him a sense of extreme danger. For some reason, Longhuai ancestor had a vague feeling that Lu Ping would definitely be safe. At this moment, Xiang Laozu's furious and shocked shout rang out in the distance. When he turned to look, he saw Butterfly Fairy shrieking in pain as her body was sent flying backwards. Blood splattered in the air, forming a blood-red mist. Longhua Ancestor was shocked. He took a deep look at the purple chi, then turned and flew towards where Pangdaran was. Before he could even be seen, Longhua Ancestor had already shouted, "Fellow Xiang, don't panic. I'm coming." In the depths of the churning purple chi, although Lu Ping had turned into a true dragon, he was already at the end of his tether. Beneath his true dragon form was a sea of lightning source. Lu Ping had actually turned the sea of lightning source into a pool of lightning at the very last moment. He wanted to make this ball of lightning source his own. This was a gamble of life and death. If he succeeded, he would be able to resolve the crisis and even reach the heavens in a single step. If he failed, he would be reduced to ashes, and everything would be for naught. Chapter 1580. Taking advantage of the moment when Pangdaran attacked Lu Ping, the Butterfly Fairy and Xiang Laozu joined hands to attack Pangdaran. At the cost of destroying Taoist Gui's true spirit carapace and 15-ton cudgel, they broke the protective source of Pangdaran's body and even forced Pangdaran's body to retreat to neutralize their joint attack. The Butterfly Fairy took the opportunity to attack Pangdaran, who had lost the protection of the source of thunder, with the blood magic needle. Seeing that Pangdaran was about to be hit, the Butterfly Fairy could not hold back her excitement. However, as soon as the smile appeared on the Butterfly Fairy's face, it froze, and then her eyes widened, revealing a trace of fear. In the reflection of her eyes, Pangdaran, who had been passively resisting the besiegement of the others, suddenly moved. Pangdaran naturally pinched his right thumb and index finger. The blood magic needle seemed to be sent to his hand on purpose and was easily pinched by Pangdaran in front of his chest. Pangdaran's body moved. How could he move? Wasn't it said that his newly reconstructed body couldn't move when he infused his divine power into it? At this time, the divine power he was focusing on moved before it was perfected. Could it be? The Butterfly Fairy suddenly realized something, and the panic on her face immediately eased. She was about to warn the others, but she saw that Pangdaran looked down at the blood magic needle in his hand, then shook his head, his face full of pity and contempt. Then, without even looking at the Butterfly Fairy, who was not far away, he suddenly waved his hand. In an instant, the Butterfly Fairy seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. She didn't even have time to prepare for defense before she was sent flying by a tremendous force. Accompanied by a shrill scream in the air, there was only a mist of blood all over the sky. Little Chan Er's things can only be used to stab people in the hands of a useless descendant like you? Taoist Peng didn't even raise his head, and he seemed to be so indifferent and casual as he spoke casually. However, the ears of Ancestor Long Huai, who'd rushed over to assist Taoist Peng, were filled with killing intent. When his body was shaken, it meant that Pangdaran's plan of cultivating all 8 realms at the same time and restoring his original power to the perfect realm had been completely ruined. It would be strange if Pangdaran didn't want to kill him. But now, not only were Longhua Ancestor and Xiang Laozu not shocked by Pangdaran's tyrannical strength of severely injuring the Butterfly Fairy, they were overjoyed and determined that this was the best time for them to defeat Pangdaran. Pangdaran cultivated all 8 realms at the same time, but none of his original powers had been cultivated to perfection. In other words, although Pangdaran had opened all 8 original powers, strictly speaking, his cultivation was only at the true spirit realm. He was even weaker than the few of them who were at the perfection realm of the true spirit realm. If this wasn't a heaven-sent opportunity, then what was it? The two of them no longer cared about the life or death of the Butterfly Fairy. They didn't even care about Lu Ping's life or death. They attacked Pangdaran together from the front and back. My plan for tens of thousands of years has been ruined in the hands of you juniors. Even if I grind your bones and scatter your ashes, it won't be enough. I only have hatred in my heart. I want to dig out your hearts, dig out your true spirits, and turn your bodies into puppets. I'll make your true spirits suffer the most vicious torture in this world. Ha ha, at that time, your puppets will be the torturers. Peng Doran's words were filled with laughter, but there was no trace of a smile on his face. There was only a cold expression that made people tremble. Even though the condensation of Taoist Peng's essence divine ability had yet to reach perfection, his strength was still terrifyingly formidable. Patriarch Long Huai tried to use the vines formed from his natal spirit treasure to restrain Taoist Peng, but unexpectedly, the vines were torn apart by Taoist Peng's tyrannical physical strength. Even Patriarch Long Huai himself was unable to control his own body. If he had not reacted quickly enough, he would have been dragged to Taoist Peng's side. Xiang Laozu took the opportunity to attack from behind. Peng Doran frowned slightly and had to give up the idea of chasing after Longhuai Ancestor. He only had time to strike a palm at Longhuai Ancestor from afar. Even this casual palm strike made Longhuai Ancestor feel as if he was facing a great enemy. The wine cauldron of heaven and earth above his head spun rapidly in front of him, bringing with it a strange force. Any magical power that entered the protection of the cauldron would be diverted. However, this method clearly had no effect on Peng Doran's palm. The cauldron shook and a spirit ape let out a pitiful cry before it stopped spinning. However, Longhuai Ancestor, who was deep inside the cauldron, could feel a powerful force coming from the cauldron. Longhuai Ancestor's face instantly turned red, and he forcefully swallowed back the blood in his throat. On the world-treasured cauldron, an artifact spirit ape's body was directly blasted apart, and it transformed into a ball of pure quintessence that dispersed into the surroundings. Ancestor Long Huai took the cauldron in his hand, and he instantly gasped. Only now did he notice that an enormous palm print had appeared on the cauldron's wall. Peng Doran's cultivation was only in the first true spirit realm, but his strength was still this strong. While Longhuai Ancestor was hesitating, Xiang Laozu on the side couldn't hold on any longer, and he called out to the Longhuai Ancestor experts for help. It was already a moment of life and death. They couldn't suffer any more injuries. Longhuai Ancestor roused his spirit, and the broken crystal hammer flew out once again, directly smashing down at Peng Doran's descendant. Looking past Peng Doran's back, Longhuai Ancestor could see that Xiang Laozu had already turned into a true spirit realm. The 15-ton rod had been continuously destroyed by Peng Doran, and now it looked like a bow. The good fortune cauldron's lid had already been opened, and the source energy from the void was continuously pouring into it. Then the 5-element source energy poured out from the pot, trying to replenish Xiang Laozu's energy consumption. There was also a spirit fan made of 5 colored feathers that was fanning in the air. Together with the 5-element source energy coming from the good fortune cauldron, the two complemented each other, and it was actually able to dissolve half of Peng Doran's attack. It was because of this that Xiang Laozu was able to hold on against Peng Doran for a while. 5-element spirit light fan. He didn't think that the treasure of the Endless Mountains peacock royalty would actually fall into the hands of Xiang Laozu. This treasure was Peng Doran's life treasure. Its quality was the same as the 15-ton rod, and it was not inferior to the other 6 sacred weapons. After Peng Doran saw this treasure, he was unable to restrain his anger. However, after tens of thousands of years, the divine sense imprint he left in the treasure had already been erased by the previous generations of Peacock Kings. Now that his body had been reconstructed, the treasure no longer recognized its old master. Just as Peng Doran gave up on condensing the 8 realms' divine ability and wholeheartedly wanted to kill everyone to vent his anger, Lu Ping's purple clouds were flashing with lightning and rolling thunder. He had opened up his Sea of Origin after reaching the true spirit realm and was trying to fuse with the source of thunder. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.